Hello and welcome to Zelda Speedruns. Tonight we're bringing you another Twilight Princess Any Percent match. Wolf Dash 2. It's Mofat. Is it Mofat versus Bruggles? Hopefully I'm pronouncing their names correctly. It's round 1. I'm joined tonight by Mark Heron and Pitsky MP. And hopefully I believe okay, one of our commentators will be a little bit late, but you will have two commentators who are very knowledgeable about the game, unlike me. I'm just a restreamer. So I am joined by Pitsky. I'm going to set the runners off, and I'm going to let him take over, and then we should be joined shortly by Mark Heron. So thank you very much tonight, gentlemen. And I should have asked you, how are you doing tonight?
We are doing great. Okay. Also, hope the runners are doing great, and we wish them the best of luck on the upcoming race here. So we got two very, very competent runners tonight. So
I am going to set them off.
Sounds good. Alrighty, so again, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight. As mentioned, we got Mofat and Bruggles doing any percent here. This is for the ZSR / Wolf Dash tournament ladder. Looks like we're going to be kicking it off here in T-minus 20 seconds, so should be a good one. Again, good luck to all the runners. So my name is Pitsky MP, recent Twilight Princess speedrunner / Metroid Prime speedrunner. I'll be joined tonight by Mark Heron, a longtime avid viewer of Twilight Princess speedruns as well. And it looks like we have kicked it off. The first thing I will mention here, we are going to be seeing different routes by these runners, which is kind of interesting. Their PB times are very similar, a few minutes apart from each other, which is going to make for a pretty interesting race. One of the runners will be collecting Zora armor and the other will not. So we'll see a bit of a route variation coming up eventually here. First trick here, we're going to skip a lot of the beginning of the game. We don't really feel like going around and collecting the fishing rod and all that good stuff. So we're just going to lay a rock in front of the gate here and we're going to clip through it. This is going to kick off a fairly complex glitch, but a short explanation for that being that we're going to get the sword and the shield in our inventory here by resetting the game as we void out. This allows us to control Link on the start menu here. It's kind of like a special version of the start screen menu. We need to void out here again just in order to gain control of Link and be able to access our save menu. But having done that, once we reload the game, we will be warped to Faron Woods, and we will have the sword and the shield sort of in our inventory. We will have access to the sword and the shield, but we didn't actually collect them, so that's going to lead to an interesting problem a few minutes down the line from now. In the meantime, we need to do some things in Faron here. Mainly, we need to help Talon, who has been kidnapped by some mean forest creatures, and we need to save her. Or I'm actually never really actually sure whether or not Talon was a boy or a girl, but either way, we're going to save them and the monkey. A lot of what you're seeing here in the beginning is this kind of standard movement stuff. TP has a lot of hidden. It's a him. Okay. Chat did let me know that it's a him, so that's good to know. TP has a lot of hidden things in the speedrun that you wouldn't necessarily notice as a casual viewer of the game. Things like frame perfect inputs that will allow us to do like dashes out of text boxes and stuff like that. Things that save small amounts of time here and there, but over the course of a 3-hour run, they add up. Rolling, for example, another thing that might just look pretty standard, but you have the ability to lose a lot of time to it, actually, if you have like unoptimal rolls. Kind of interesting. So we're just collecting a key here. We're just going to kind of still, like I said, make our way to the entrance of the Forest Temple area, and we're going to save Talon. So there's I guess I could kind of explain too a little bit more about the back in time glitch that we're using. So as I mentioned, we never actually collected the sword and the shield. It's just been placed in our inventory because the version of Link that was on the start menu had those things equipped. So we just kind of are borrowing them, so to speak. This means that we can't actually go and collect them the way that the game intended, and we're never actually able to leave Faron and Ordon area to enter the greater Hyrule. And this means that we're going to need to do a very difficult trick. It comes up here pretty early in the run. It can be kind of a roadblock, a fairly difficult trick to learn and to do consistently in runs. We call it Sword and Shield Skip, and we'll be enlisting the help of our friend Hugo for that. Back in Time, interestingly enough as well, has other aspects to it. It's a pretty complex glitch, and it's pretty hard to explain all of its ins and outs in a brief window of time. But it can also be used to set flags and values and stuff in the memory of the game, which we'll utilize later on. So that's not the last time that you'll see that trick being used. Coming up here is kind of the first rough RNG section of the run here. TP does have some RNG elements throughout the course of the run. They're kind of spread out here and there. This probably being back to back, we have goats and then bow. And those combined probably are the two largest elements of RNG in the run. There are others, but they vary in severity and impact to the run. You'll see lots and lots of resets from, more particularly from the top runners in this portion of the game, because they're just simply not able to proceed, having lost like a full minute or something to the RNG here at the beginning. Seeing Mofat getting a little trolled by the goats there, unfortunately, but both runners with sub 30, that's great to see. That's a fairly decent time to achieve. I believe the best ever is like 16 or something like that, 16 seconds. So, anything sub 30 means they lost less than 15 seconds to this RNG there. So that's not terrible. Entering bow now. Interestingly enough, because of Back in Time, this also set Ordon to a certain state where basically normally you'd have to go to Goron. You'd have to travel to Kakariko Village and Death Mountain and talk to the Gorons there and come back, and you would then be able to get the iron boots from Bo. But we are able to progress through these text boxes here by just talking to him a bunch of times, and eventually we will end up with him expressing that he can teach us something secret, and we're supposed to follow him to his back room where he likes to torment speedrunners over and over and over again. I guess he enjoys it in some sick way or something. This fight, I guess is what we'll call it, requires just heavy mashing, and there are ways to basically, as you see, Bruggles might be doing it here. Oh, just missed the mashing for it. If you slap Bo right off of the start and push him, you can actually get him off of the stage in one go around instead of having to take the chance of having him dodge you or something like that again. Both runners here, a 7:30 time for the iron boots here, fairly decent time for Bruggles. We're going to be seeing a sub 8 from Mofat, so that's also well done. I would certainly be accepting that in any run I do at this point in time. So Now we're gonna go and we're going to experience the first transformation into Wolf Link here. A little bit of an introductory section where we're going to be, just kind of exposed to the wolf controls and stuff like that. It's going to lead to us coming back to Ordon here, and that's when we will be attempting to get our friend Hugo to help us out. So entering the fountain area here, where we can start the cutscene to be turned into Wolf Link here. A lot of the stuff you're seeing in early game is just kind of movement based, I suppose. Just attempting to not bonk into walls, optimize movement around corners, not lose time to rolling and stuff like that. In the beginning of the game can have you can consistently get good times as long as your movement is good. And of course the RNG cooperates. So we saw like a 1-frame box break from Bruggles there. Kind of neat. It just means you don't have to break the box at the start of the cutscene. It saves like, I think, a couple of frames. So you gotta always save the frames. Every frame counts. And apologies again too. It seems my co-commentator, for whatever reason, his mic decided to cash out on him right before the race started. So he is currently attempting to sort out his mic issues here. Hopefully he will be joining us soon. As was I, he got into TP speedrunning actually via Mofat from her GDQ run that she did once upon a time. That was actually the same way I discovered Twilight Princess speedrunning, and huge shout outs to Mofat for being that person to make that, yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, hopefully he will be joining us soon. But yeah, big shout outs to Mofat, for that exposure, for all the TP runners that have done GDQ runs, and just getting more and more people into this fantastic game. A game that I've loved my whole life and only done some more ever since I've learned how to speedrun. So yes, Fino's AD run was phenomenal as well. That was definitely one of the first run. Look at that, Markeron has joined us. So we were just discussing your absence.
My apologies, folks.
Hey, look at that, your mic works. Fantastic.
It's amazing what restarting a computer can do.
Indeed. So we are currently just traveling the tower here and dealing with really horrible hitboxes on ropes currently. So I'm attempting to get one frame. Yes, and attempting to get 1-frame mid dashes here at the beginning of the start sequence. Interestingly enough, you actually can't get the 1-frame dash off of every time you do a mid dash like this. It only occurs for certain ones. We as runners, I guess, just know which ones they are and attempt to go for them. As you saw, Mofat actually just got the one in the tower there. So the very first jump there was a 1-framer. You can also actually mash through that text box at the top before you jump down to the castle rooftops here and get a 1-frame dash there. It actually does save a little bit more time because than standard 1-frame dashes do, just because you're skipping like 4 or 5 minute text boxes as well. By the way, chat is informing me that they can't hear you quite as well, so maybe try turning up your volumes.
AX, how is that? I'm just I've moved my mic sort of closer here. I have my input volume all the way up. I don't want to turn the gain too high on my board here.
We'll know soon enough, I guess. I can hear you just fine, so.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm hoping, yeah, if you can hear me fine, I'm hoping AX and chat can also hear me fine.
Absolutely. Yep. Okay. He said definitely better. So, and others are confirming that as well. So fantastic. So here we are. We have entered the notorious Sword and Shield skip section of the game here. As I had mentioned earlier, kind of preluding to this, our friend Hugo over here is a Mokoblin?
Mokoblin, I believe.
Mokoblin, yeah, okay. Names are hard. So anyway, he is our friend, our enemy, our frenemy, however you want to describe. He allows us to actually get to later parts of the game, so you got to give him props for that. But sometimes he doesn't like to cooperate very much with us, and there's a little bit of RNG associated with this. This is largely just very precise tricks that we are using to get it to happen, but whether or not he swings at you is RNG. So obviously the less he's swinging, the more we're able to adjust him and get him to the right spot, meaning there are minor RNG elements. The exploit we're kind of abusing right here is one that we will see a lot later on once we collect an item, the Gale Boomerang, but it's a long jump attack. This allows us to traverse longer distances, and shout out to Bruggles, he just got it first try. That's great. Hopefully Mofat can recreate that. This allows us to go farther than perfect. We both got it first try. That's awesome to see. Very close in time here. Anyway, so the exploit does allow us to go further distances than you would normally be able to do. Basically, there are two different triggers. There are two different triggers there in that kind of hallway, area that we're in. One of them, Minna tries to tell you that you need to go back and collect the sword and the shield before venturing any further. This one is the one that you're supposed to hit first, and informing you that you can't continue through the game until you've gone back and done that. But as I mentioned earlier, we're not able to get those anymore, so we actually have to do this in order to continue through the game. Not only that, but it is fast. The second trigger, the one that basically is able to be hit once the other one disappears from collecting the sword and the shield, kind of is nestled within the first, and the only way for us to get to it is via the air, using the long jump attack and having timed it perfectly in order to get maximum distance from it to hit this trigger in the air instead, accomplishing our task of getting into the Pharaon Twilight here, which we are now going to go through, skipping the bugs. You'll notice we're not going to be clearing this Twilight. That's because we don't need to in order to beat the game. We are going to go to the Forest Temple here eventually, but we're only going to do that to get the Gale Boomerang. So
Absolutely, and the Gale Boomerang is such an integral part of the run, allowing us to, like Pitsky said, do the long jump attack, which is an incredibly important and sequence-breaking.
Possibly my favorite. Possibly my favorite sequence break, or I guess exploit that we do in the run as well. Honestly,
for sure. I like I said last time, I remember my first time watching a Twilight Princess run. It was Mofat's run at SGDQ 2013. And it was absolutely incredible to see how Mofat was able to just absolutely fly all over the place using this what I thought was otherwise normal functioning piece of equipment.
Yeah, and I mean the ways in which we abuse the boomerang are some of the long jump attacks can vary from being very difficult and very precise to fairly easy to do, but regardless of their difficulty level, they all look amazing. So we are now coming up to, in my opinion, probably the largest, and especially from a casual perspective, the largest sequence break in the run here. We just used the Shadow Beast, as Bruggles demonstrated, pushed them up against the wall, and did a Midna dash or a Midna charge in order to get ourselves up and out of bounds on top of the bank there. And this allows us to traverse to the Lost Woods area of the game and actually collect the Master Sword right now, which
unfortunately very unlucky there.
Yeah, very unlucky. First got a bad swing and then a slightly bad angle, but thankfully we're able to reset the Shadow Beast by just going and taking care of the other one and not the third one. And thankfully we are able to reload, so to speak, or reset the Shadow Beast and attempt it over and over again without losing massive amounts of time. Failing Sword and Shield skip is basically a guaranteed minute or so that you're going to lose just in, having to get Hugo back to the right spot and all that kind of stuff. Failing a EMS or two attempt, can range anywhere from losing like 15 seconds minimum, or even 10 seconds minimum, to obviously however long it takes you to get it. But no, only losing 10 seconds to a attempt at where best case scenario is fairly. We're grateful for that. The trick is actually pretty difficult to do and difficult to learn. So I'll kind of I wouldn't say maybe quite as hard as Sword and Shield skip, but still a tricky one to get down. So having them be back to back, it is rather graceful that one of them is at least quick to reset, not lose a ton of time too.
And for anyone interested in the game, Mofat does actually have a tutorial on YouTube on how to do an
a phenomenal one, actually. I will attest to that. I used that to actually learn the trick along with a couple others, but it was definitely one of the integral pieces to me learning. Mofat, definitely another shout out for making that tutorial for people. There's actually a lot of really, really great help that to be found for anybody that is interested in running this game. Always feel free to just join the Discord server and just reach out. There are tons of runners just anxious to help you learn the game and give you as many tools as you. There's everything from Dolphin to Dragonbane, who made Neo Gamma, which is like a cheat engine basically for Twilight Princess. Just lots of really great resources and tools there. So absolutely, always feel free to come and join the clan if you're if the run interests you. This is kind of just a bit of a memorization portion of the game. Basically, we've memorized the path through the woods here, which normally you would be listening for like the sound of the music to kind of tell you which way you're supposed to go, leading us finally to this fight in which we have just kind of optimized through timing and understanding how the mechanics of the fight work. You just don't want to get too close to the Skull Kid before he blows his whistle, otherwise he will get scared and he'll teleport away from you and go to a different rock, in which case you have to wait for a whole nother cycle. But if you time it out right, you can just attack him as he blows his whistle and progress through the fight in a timely fashion here.
Absolutely. And Bruggles coming up to a lovely puzzle that probably casually took most people quite a long time to complete. Definitely quicker when you know the puzzle as well as these runners do. Interesting tidbit of information though. The puzzle is actually designed to look like Majora's Mask, and I know I mentioned that last time, but for any of the new viewers, I figured I'd mention that.
And that's really neat. I actually didn't realize that, and as soon as you said it, I looked at it. That good call. It sure does resemble Majora's Mask. I do believe that so obviously there's the pattern that you saw Bruggles use here. You can, of course, invert that pattern and do it the other direction, and it will work the same. I guess it's just kind of a preference choice to whichever one you prefer to do. I also want to say there's maybe like another pattern that works, but it probably isn't as fast, seeing as I've never seen other runners use it. So
I do believe the other pattern is about 4 moves slower.
Yeah, okay. So I guess if you're feeling particularly troubled by memorizing this pattern, there is at least another one for you to use. Or I guess maybe if you mess it up, maybe it's possible to use that other one as a backup or something.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things most people don't realize is you can actually manipulate them to not move by running them up against the edge of the puzzle.
And that was what threw me. I believe that's why I had so much trouble with it casually. The fastest pattern that we use does in fact incorporate that manipulation quite a lot, and that was something I just never really thought to do as a casual player. So I would sit and aimlessly jump around until they happened to land on the correct places.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have a Master Sword. Yeah, at 22 minutes, so to speak. That's a pretty good time for a Master Sword collection. Yeah, absolutely. Both runners getting Sword and Shield skip, definitely not only does it, not only is it nice to see the runners get it first try for other reasons, but also for the mentality reason as well. It can be quite frustrating to fail that trick, and to just be able to enter into the next portions of the run with kind of a clear head, not having stressed yourself out over missing sword and shield skip. Definitely nice, just for the mentality's sake of the rest of the run, which, unfortunately / fortunately, I guess, depending on the way you might look at it, but it is basically never stops having difficult tricks and movement through the end of this 3-hour long run. It does stay fairly consistently difficult all the way through, with lots of more hard tricks to come. So just having a good mentality definitely goes a long way.
Pisky, did you want to talk a little bit about how the run is broken up?
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting dynamic with TP. The first half of the run, very practice heavy for a lot of fairly difficult tricks. Some of them ranging from very difficult to fairly difficult, and they basically kind of just happen back to back to back to back, and interspersed with slight movement sections. Midway through the run, though, after we've defeated Morpheal, the run kind of starkly changes from being extremely trick heavy to being very optimization heavy. Runners can lose a lot of time at the end of this, in the second half of this run, but not due to failing tricks necessarily, just due to not having optimized the movement quite as well, or messing up certain things here and there. I've always referred to the second half of the run as kind of the dungeon crawl. So the first half of the run, you're doing a lot of tricks and exploits to progress through the game much faster than you're supposed to casually. In the second half of the game, we're kind of almost playing it in a more intended order, but just optimizing it extremely heavily to make it as fast as possible.
Absolutely. Both of these players actually very quickly coming across our first temple here. Bruggles is actually just about to be entering in the next minute and a half. And as we were mentioning earlier, that's where we get the Gale Boomerang, which is, again, so crucial to sequence breaking this run.
And before we do that, we don't want to beat the whole temple. It's kind of slow. This temple is usually requires you to go around and collect monkeys, save them rather, and they will eventually allow you to pass into the second half of the temple where you can fight the mini boss and Ook and get the Gale Boomerang. But we prefer to actually skip doing that. As I had mentioned earlier, we will be seeing the exploit of Back in Time again. Using a very precise setup here, we're able to, again, void out and reset the game at the same time at the entrance of the temple here, just like as I mentioned, using kind of a precise setup. This one's a little bit different, though. So now we're going to void out, and we're actually going to press A as we're start, I believe, as you're falling into the void there. This actually sets up the ability to access another save, which we specifically used in Ordon after leaving Bo, because that is the location in the game that we need it to be set to. If we load that save, it brings up it actually starts us off at the King Bublin fight, and the King Bublin fight, or any fight for that matter, as soon as the fight starts, a counter starts ticking down. Something which is referred to in the game files as boss plague value. These values basically just read whether or not you've skipped a cutscene or not, and stuff like that, and help the game's memory progress the way it's supposed to. However, when the programmers were designing the Forest Temple, they needed a way to have the game discern how many monkeys were supposed to be with you when you would enter through a doorway, or enter through a door that leads to the big room in the temple that leads to Ook. And as a shortcut for doing this, they decided to, never mind. Mofat having a little bit of trouble with it, but it looks like we are solid now, and she got it good to go here. Anyway, so the boss flag values were what were used as a way to read how many monkeys were supposed to be joining us in this room here. As you just saw Bruggles, all of a sudden there's 4 monkeys joining him, and we didn't collect any of them but 1. This is because when we reset during the King Bubbling fight, and we soft reset during that fight, and then skipped the cutscene as soon as we possibly could, this set the boss flag values to the highest number possible for us, which gave us the most amount of monkeys possible as we walked through the door. Just kind of a very lucky exploit, I guess you can say, that the developers chose to use boss flag values in order to determine how many monkeys were supposed to be joining us. Seeing as using the very complex glitch back in time, we were able to manipulate that to our favorable settings.
Sorry here, Pitsky. I'm just dealing with a case of the hiccups. Do you want to keep going with that for me for a sec?
Oh, absolutely. We are attempting to skip the monkey here, or skip the spider here on Mofat's side. Kind of a stupid. Oh, he got it. She got it. Excuse me. Kind of a stupid RNG thing that a runner can decide to do. You can, of course, use the rocks to kill both of the spiders, but it is faster if you get good RNG for the spider to be to obviously not kill the second spider, using one of the rocks that we are using in lieu of skipping the slingshot early on here.
And interestingly enough, I'm hearing reports that we may have nicknamed that spider Nancy. Can anyone in chat confirm whether that's the case? And welcome back, AX. So
cool. So now we have the Gale Boomerang. That is that's good stuff. We're able to do a lot of cool stuff with the Gale Boomerang here. Interestingly enough, too, I will say this: because we have the Master Sword, it is nice where we are able to actually kill Ook really fast here in one cycle, chaining together a certain series of damage, using a jump attack chained into a quick spin. One more attack after that will finish Ook off in one cycle, meaning that we don't have to deal with the annoying RNG of Ook jumping around from pillar to pillar while we wait for him to decide to throw the boomerang at us. Coming up here, Bruggles is going to be using the very first Gale Boomerang long jump attack that we see during the course of the run. Of course, the first being the Sword and Shield skip, but we used Wolf Link and Hugo in order to do that one. From now on, you'll be seeing exclusively the Gale Boomerang used to set up all of these jump attacks. Because we didn't clear the Twilight, Minna doesn't want us to leave that area yet, and she very obstinately, refuses to let us go until we have done so. But using the long jump attack, we are able to target. It's basically anything that is higher elevation than what Link is currently standing on, or when the Gale Boomerang is going over a void. You are able to jump attack during that period of time and initiate the exploit. You saw a second use of it used right there real quick on Bruggles' side to skip talking to the postman. Just a really quick 25-second time saver. Obviously pretty slow to talk to that postman. So we use one there to skip over the trigger that would usually be used to have the postman intercept you. And
just to expand on what Pisky was saying there about escaping Farron, it is required before you leave Farron that you both clear the Twilight as well as defeat the Forest Temple, which is very slow to do, obviously. So when we found that we could escape the forest by using the Boomerang LJA or long jump attack, that was very useful. Bisky, do you want to talk about what Bruggles is about to do here with Gorge Boy?
Yeah, so Gorge Void. This is a routing. And as I had mentioned, there are multiple routes in this game. Some more beginner friendly. Bruggles is going to be attempting to do a jump attack. Unfortunately, did not get it. Right on the last, there's a frame in between killing the Shadow Beast and the cutscene starting there and Minna talking to you. There's the one frame in which we are able to actually do a jump attack and skip Minna talking to us. Now, this is important because this allows us to actually go and do what we then refer to as Gorge Skip immediately afterwards, allowing us access to Kakariko Village immediately, which does in fact give us a slight, I believe it's a minute in routing difference. So getting Gorge Void here does save about a minute if you're successful in routing. There are other routes for this game that do not get that don't use Gorge Void at all. However, both of these runners using that particular route. Bruggles unfortunately not getting the Gorge Void portion of it, but
we are about to see Mofat get their attempt at this here. Mofat has, from my understanding, uses only one input to attempt to do this, an incredibly precise input. So we'll see if she's able to pull that off here.
Yeah, runners do have the opportunity to try and mash for this. However, a lot of the top runners have taken the time to memorize where this frame is and practice hitting it on the one with a single button press. Unfortunately, neither runner is getting it. It is a rather precise trick, and it isn't super uncommon to see runners fail this. So, and it's not the biggest deal in the long run. We have optimized the route such to be where if you do fail it, you're still able to continue through the route and go back and do the rupee roll just after completing Lakebed Temple instead of before. So not completing the temple, I should say, but getting the claw shot. We did skip through the gate there into Lineru using Wolf Link. This is a very, we are thankful nowadays for having being able to do this with Wolf Link. Runners in the past they used Epona, positioned her in front of the gate and then tried to roll through the gate with Epona blocking them, and it was a rather stupid trick. It involved some RNG, and you saw people kind of just get trolled by it pretty often. Thankfully, we were able to eventually switch over to doing it with Wolf Link, which just turned out to be so much easier. Mm-hmm. We are now witnessing Bruggles attempt to do Pillar Clip, which once you get into the Lineru, it warps you to the top of the bridge, and without Zora armor, we are able to clip through the pillar. It's a very precise trick, very difficult, and then Tap Swim, which is a technique that we refer to when you equip and unequip the iron boots rapidly, allowing us to quickly swim faster than you would normally be able to. And we use this to get to the loading zone for the Lakebed Temple. And as it turns out, the amount of time that we have, the amount of air that we are given before you drown, basically ends up being just enough to both clip through the pillar and tap swim our way to the loading zone. A very stressful trick, one in which if you don't know how to tap swim properly, or you don't position yourself to take the most direct route to the loading zone, you will most definitely be drowning in that scenario. So thankfully, we do now see Mofat joining Bruggles in Lineru here in just one moment. A little bit of trouble with the Pharaon escape, but nothing too detrimental here.
Mm-hmm. So, a funny story for you all. One of the OG strats was, instead of using opponent to push you through the gate, you could actually perform what's called map glitch, which we'll be touching on later in the run, and position her out of bounds, warp, come back, and then hop on opponent while she's essentially parked in the ground. and do very silly things to be able to skip the Lanayru gate. Of course, Mofat very quickly getting to Lanayru here as well.
Using the much appreciated wolf skip here. So now we with all things going well here, we like to assume that they will. Mofat will be joining Bruggles and in the Lakebed Temple here. Again, mostly movement optimization, but we do actually utilize a couple of, as we see Bruggles taking a swan dive off of the bridge right into the concrete there, face full of concrete. Always tastes really nice. But we do utilize a couple of difficult LJs. If you missed any of the ones if you missed them here as Bruggles is doing it, you'll get another opportunity to see them, obviously, in just 1 second here once Mofat is inside the temple proper. We'll wish her good luck on a clean pillar clip here.
The setup looks fairly good so far. It's really going to come down to how quickly she can react to the pillar clip itself, whether she can maintain the proper air.
And unfortunately, I was going to say, it did look like as if she was just a little too far to the side there, which is unfortunate. Thankfully, failing this and drowning means when we respawn, we do just respawn on the shoreline here, and we are able to use a backup setup and without losing a ton of time, we are able to get back into the temple or reattempt pillar clip here. So hopefully that goes well for her. Meanwhile, Bruggles is attempting to one cycle Deku Toad here using a fairly precise and very tight window of time. Yes, he did get it. Very tight window of time to input 10 attacks on the tongue there using the Master Sword, and that allows us to one cycle Deku Toad, which something kind of an elusive trick, to be perfectly honest, one that I myself have a lot of trouble with.
The interesting thing about how that works is that there's actually a period of time after each hit in which the Deku Toad is invincible. So we have to time it such that as soon as the Deku Toad is no longer invincible, we can attack them once again. Bruggles making good use of that strip there. Unfortunately, Mofat once again missing the pillar clip here.
Yes, that is rather unfortunate. The pillar clip, though, being, as I kind of briefly did touch on it again. This run just absolutely chock full of really difficult tricks, and especially very heavily so in the first half, as I mentioned, kind of just back to back to back. Pillar clip being one that I personally had a lot more trouble learning than even Sword and Shield skip personally. This was something that I literally spent like an entire day grinding pillar clip, just could not. And once I finally learned how to clip through the pillar itself, learning how to tap swim efficiently to the loading zone is a whole other thing in itself as well. So just an overall difficult trick, and one that is not, it isn't a total surprise to see even the top runners of the game, a position that Mofat has at one point in time honestly held. So it isn't any surprise to see somebody fail that. And also, interestingly too, like Sanctity did mention that if you happen to save down there and you spawn at the spring, apparently. So that just something I'm pointing out. Like Sanctity did point that out. Yeah, and unfortunately, Mofat having some trouble with the pillar clip here. Our heartfelt regrets go out, but we'll see it cleaned up here fairly quickly. I have my assurances.
This is such a difficult trick, and as well, we are dealing with a race setting. The pressure is going to be high on both teams. Bruggles obviously able to work it through. Mofat having a little bit more trouble, but Mofat is an excellent runner as well, and we're sure she'll make it through here fairly soon.
So the Bruggles now progressing to the next portion of the game here. After getting the claw shot, we need to go kill the Shadow Beast at the top of Zoro's domain to be able to activate that warp for us. Yes, and thankfully we did see that will be a clean pillar clip there. Awesome, good to see. Mofat is going to be entering Wakebed Temple here. Bruggles using the Kargarok actually to traverse to the next portion of the game here, using a rather risky manipulation, falling into the water. They're using the Iron Boots in the water to lure the Kargarok into the water. Funnily enough, if the Kargarok grabs you in the water, the game's memory just simply can't handle basically. Whenever an enemy, which there's an enemy riding the Kargarok, whenever an enemy touches water in this game, they die. And the Kargarok grabbing you, and just the combined memory of the Kargarok grabbing you, the enemy on top dying in the water, and all that. It actually freezes the game. The game hard crashes, and you get a rather horrible noise emitting from your Wii, and everything. it basically tells you messed up really bad, and you now need to restart your run. Thankfully, though, there are some pretty consistent setups for that trick, and as we saw, Bruggles did not have to worry about it. Got the Kargarok into the water just fine, and started the trek to the top of Zora's domain here.
For sure. I'm sure that many of the viewers are going to be familiar with that awful sound that comes from the Wii, as at least I believe everyone in the chat has likely had a game crash on them at some point. The total hard lock and whiny noise that occurs.
It kind of sounds like your Wii is about to explode.
It really does. It just kind of loops the audio line for a moment, and then it just absolutely breaks down.
So having destroyed the Shadow Beast at the top of Zora's Domain here, as I mentioned, does give us access to that warp portal now, which is basically the only reason that we actually went up there to begin with. We are now able to, and this is where you would see the route variation occur, having successfully gotten Gorge Void or not. If you got Gorge Void, you could, at this point in time, immediately warp back to Kakariko Village, which is where you would be going had you if you had successfully gotten Gorge Void and then done Gorge Skip, you would be in Kakariko Village and activated that, or killed the Shadow Beast there to activate that warp portal. Because you didn't get Gorge Void, basically now you just warp back to Pharaon instead and have to do the Pharaon escape one more time in order to go back for Gorge Skip. Having gotten the Claw Shot and made your way through Lakebed Temple. Mofat now entering the Deku Toad fight for the one cycle and an exit out of the temple here. So as you can see, still not terribly far behind. Both runners not getting Gorge Void, having to do the same route variation here. Mofat will be journeying to the top of Zora's domain here any moment. So, despite failing a few pillar clips, we're still not looking at miles of difference here from the runners.
Absolutely, and like you said, small variations in the route can add up to larger differences later on. And I believe you mentioned before the stream, Pitsky, that Bruggles uses the Zora armor route. Is that correct?
Absolutely, and so after this, we will be seeing Bruggles actually do the King Bubblen 2 fight, which also involves the I guess I forget what they call it. The when they're chasing after the caravan with the Zora's child and sick inside the back of it. Basically, he will be getting the Zora armor, which later on leads to a lot less stress in the Morpheal fight. Because we don't collect Zora armor in the no Zora armor routes, Morpheal is a rather frightening boss and can be very difficult to learn. So we got Rupee Roll coming up here. Using a technique in which you target the Ruby with a very precise couple of LJ points here. positioned ourselves in front of this fence, we are actually able to clip onto the other side of the fence, which you're not normally supposed to do. Using a slight manipulation on the control stick and mashing through that text box, we find ourselves rolling onto the other side of the fence here. Very, very carefully traversing ourselves to a point on the fence right here where you're seeing Bruggles attempt the LJ. We now use another LJ to skip across the void there. Having now successfully both not Gorge Void, but skipping the Gorge and journeying to Kakariko Village.
Absolutely, and we are noticing Bruggles did not use a safety save there, which means that if we lost the yellow rupee or otherwise failed rupee roll, we would have to use the zombie hover backup strat, which is very entertaining to watch, but incredibly slow.
Incredibly slow, and I personally do go for a backup save there. Bruggles, with a much, much better final PB time than myself currently, more than likely very, very comfortable in that trick and opting to not do that safety save anymore. Something that I plan to hopefully be able to initiate sooner than later, but currently have no desire to learn how to do the zombie hover backup strats. So,
because why do the backup strat when you can just do the real strat?
yes, exactly. Even if it does require a safety save. So Mofat successfully not being grabbed by the Kargarok there, meaning no hard crash and no horrible noises emitting from the Wii. We now are going to be traveling through the canyon here, or whatever this is referred to. Interestingly enough, we didn't see either runner use it, but I will point out that there is actually an out of bounds used that can be used here to skip traveling inbounds and being able to avoid all the rocks and stuff. Not the hardest thing in the world to learn, but something that in case you see a different runner use it at some point, that would just be the only difference. I think it's only like 10 seconds slower, or maybe even less, to go through inbounds, so it's not a huge time difference. Bruggles now going to be clearing the Twilight here. This is kind of one of the first heavy optimizations. And I will sorry for the chat. Bruggles is ahead currently for the time being. So this is kind of one of the first sections where movement becomes very, very important and optimization becomes very important. There aren't any real hard tricks, so to speak, of in this clearing of the Twilight. What a runner will do to optimize the time is simply just using strats to avoid being trolled by the bugs, which are rather trolly, to be perfectly honest. The developers didn't want to make it just super simple to kill these bugs, and so they gave them quite troublesome AI. Using strats, though, we are able to, for the most part, avoid complications.
Absolutely, and then at this point, I just want to mention that even though Bruggles has the lead right now, some amount of small mistakes or one big mistake could bring Mofat back into the lead here. There's nothing decisive as yet, as we still have a lot of the run to complete. Over two-thirds.
Yeah, and in fact, yesterday, in another race that we were commentating, we saw both runners using very different routes and varying success in getting the tricks. But both runs syncing up literally from the second half on. They were within 10 seconds of each other the entire time. So that just goes to show that, anything can happen during a TP race. Virtually anything. I mean, you just never know. So that, it is by no means can we count Mofat out of this yet.
Mm-hmm. And Mofat just completing the Shadow Beast fight at the top of Zora's domain. We'll be very shortly getting to that rupee roll trick that we discussed. So notably, Bruggles has Bruggles done basement bugs yet? I haven't quite looked over.
Yes. That's the first set of bugs that you collect. The very first 3 bugs that you collect are basement.
Fantastic, yeah, and we spoke about this yesterday, Pisky. But one of the neat things about basement bugs is talk to any 2 runners, and you're going to get potentially very different ways of doing it. It all comes down to personal preference for the most part, as well as comfortability with the tricks.
Yeah, a really large range and variety of strats that can be used. It can be said that certain strats are definitely faster, but there are so many other strats throughout the course of the run, though, that quite honestly are so... The difference between them is so minute that it really just comes down to a personal preference on what the runner wants to do in order to get through the game. And these strats sometimes can, honestly, you could see 2 runners finish the game with the exact same end time, having used just virtually totally different strats throughout the course of the run a lot of times. So TP not being one of those speedruns that is, I guess, there are some runs out there where every run looks identical to each other. Every runner tries to do the exact same thing because it's the fastest way to get through the game. So,
and just to mention this, Bruggles did get Bomb House Skip there, which is a strategy that allows you to kill a bug early in order right before that bug would enter the bomb house. You don't have to go through the sequence of going inside and activating the cutscenes therein.
Cutscenes are slow.
Absolutely. Little tidbit of information once again. If you go back to that point later at night, then you will find that there's actually a Poe in the bomb house area there. So we're not sure if someone may have been caught up in the blast, but
it's possible because it's very possible that Link may have committed manslaughter there, whether it be involuntary or not.
Well, it just goes to show that when you're getting Tears of Light, it's can't let anything stop you.
No. Saving frames is always more important. You know what they say: kill the animals, save the frames. By the way, I'm an animal activist, so I don't actually want people to kill animals. Do not go do that, please.
For sure. Obviously, don't.
But also kill the animals and save the frames.
When doing Super Metroid, of course.
Or any game, really.
Absolutely.
Mofat being successful on the first portion. Okay. Successful. I almost spoke too soon. Successful on the rupee roll and the gorge skip. So that's great. Unfortunately, it did look a little hairy there for a brief second. Once you get over the fence, the trick isn't over. You do need to progress or traverse yourself to the correct area behind the fence very carefully, because you don't want to fall into the void. That's bad news.
And Chad is pointing out that Legend of Zelda has a long history of informing us that harming animals is not good, by making our lives difficult when we hurt cuckoos.
This is true. It does does happen, but on the other hand, when you collect the bomb bag in Dodongo's Cavern in OOT, it literally specifically mentions that they make those bomb bags from the stomach of Dodongos. So take that as with a grain of salt, I guess.
So chickens are not okay to harm, but giant fire-breathing lizards.
I guess, but Dodongos are. So Bruggles having just finished the Twilight, and Mofat just starting the Twilight here. Kind of an interesting split. But yeah.
Dodongos have a whole cavern. They're fine, says the chat.
Varying degrees of mentalities here.
For sure.
They are enemies, and we are encouraged to kill them. I suppose that is also true. I still don't know as if I would use their stomachs to make anything, but... Mofat getting a little trolled by the basement bug there. something that all runners are accustomed to happening once in a while. Those are probably the trolliest of all of the bugs that you can get during this section. So
Mofat potentially getting a little bit frustrated there, bonking the wall for a little longer than normal. It is important that both runners, no matter what happens, keep a bit of a cool head here, as anything can go wrong at any time, and keeping the pace of the run is important to being able to keep a competitive time.
So we're gonna see Bruggles go and get the next Twilight. So basically, we do clear both of the Twilights. We clear both Eldin and Lanayru Twilights back to back from each other here. That is just how we've determined the route to be most optimal. So we're gonna go and collect the next vessel here to begin clearing the Lanayru Twilight. Again, another just basically movement heavy, optimization heavy section. Not a ton of, in fact, even less tricks here than seen during the Eldin Twilight, which does use like Bomb House Skip, for example. Mofat bonking into plenty of walls here. Possibly just getting that bonk counter that she uses in her chat, nice and giving it a little bit of a healthy buffer. I know she has a bot that keeps track of how many times she has ever bonked into walls. So.
Yes. And of course, we are going to make the old callback of blame Jesper for this.
Indeed.
So as we see Bruggles here once again completing another Shadow Beast fight, we are going to be seeing Bruggles attempting to clear the Lanayru Twilight. Now, the bugs for the Lanayru Twilight are much more spread out than the other one, so the Lanayru Twilight is generally the slowest to clear. That being said, there are, of course, as always, incredible movement optimizations that can make those long distances easier on us.
Yes. The most significant, I would say, trick that you're going to see here is coming up. Not really a trick, but a very minor thing that you can do. We're going to be attempting a very tight window of timing, of input timing as you go over the waterfall here. After leaving the top of Zoro's domain, you can side hop down to the correct ledge, saving just a little bit of time in how you traverse this area. Something else we're doing here is we actually skipped a cutscene in which, during this period of time, if you were to try and leave on the other side of the Bruggles actually opting to use the backup strat instead of the side hop, so I do apologize. It's possible Mofat will be attempting the side hop. It does lose a lot of time, and it's rather tight input, so it's not surprising to see the backup strat used here during a race, losing only a couple of seconds to that. But anyway, so there is a cutscene in which the mother of the sick Zora child tries to waylay you and express her desire to have you save her son. It's a cutscene, and obviously cutscenes are slow, and we would like to skip it. So if using just knowledge of where that cutscene trigger starts, we are able to avoid hitting that as we leave Zoro's domain during the multiple times that we visit it during the Twilight clearing here. Thankfully, once the Twilight has been cleared, that cutscene trigger disappears, and we no longer have to worry about hitting that trigger anymore, or activating that cutscene anymore. And Mofat, just a little bit of spaghetti here there's really weird hitboxes inside of the house once you have blown it up and are attempting to collect those bugs. They are very, the hitboxes can be just a little strange. And so you need to be kind of careful while traversing your way through the house to get the tears of light after blowing the house up, or skipping blowing the house up, I suppose, in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So we did see Bruggles howl at this stone here. This is going to be the first, not the last time you see a stone being howled at. However, we only howl at this stone because we need Ending Blow. Ending Blow is required to beat the game. We cannot just take the final hit on Ganondorf without... we can't do the final hit on Ganondorf without collecting Ending Blow. So we do need to collect that particular skill, hidden skill, to get to the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. And of course, just in order to make it easier for players who may have accidentally skipped where you're supposed to get Ending Blow to get Ending Blow, whenever you talk to the Hero Shade, at first you are going to be treated to Ending Blow at that time,
regardless of which one it is. Right.
You do have to get the hidden skills in order. Now, originally you are supposed to clear the Fair and Twilight, and then the Hero Shade appears to you in the form of a wolf, as you're attempting to get to the Forest Temple. That's a little slow, obviously. We would rather just enter the Forest Temple and then talk to the Hero Shade when it's convenient to us. So we are going to be doing that after Midna's Desperate 6 minutes or so.
Yes, Midna's Desperate Hour. So Bruggles now traveling to get the farthest bug, the one that is the most out of the way. There is a lone bug chilling out in Castletown, all the way yonder on the other side of Hyrule Field here. So we are now making the long trek to Castletown in order to get that bug.
Mm-hmm. And Bruggles here not choosing to make use of the dash optimization. Now, that is totally okay. Even though frames do add up to lots over the course of a run, it's not going to be that relevant here, as it's only going to be a couple seconds at most that we're going to be losing to not optimizing your dashes. I am very curious here what's going on Mofat's side. Maybe they're having a little bit of technical difficulties or something. Possibly a little bit frustrated here.
Possibly. It is possible. The game just being very, very challenging and grueling to get through. So possibly just a little bit of frustration on that side there for the race. But it is TP and anything can happen even now, despite the difference in time. So I've literally seen races go change values despite deeper differentials. So,
and I think we've all been there with the frustration of chucking a few tricks early on in any run. You and I both run Metroid Prime as well, and we all know you and I both know how difficult that can be. Just even.
Oh yes, yeah, absolutely. Clearing up the Twilight here is Mofat. Deciding one last bonk through the steam here would be probably needed, honestly. Nice refreshing blast to the face of hot steam.
Mm-hmm. Really helps clear the head.
Indeed. So something to note too, when we did Gorge Skip, and there's a cutscene. So the cutscene that we attempted to do Gorge Void during, when you do Gorge Void and you're trying to hit that one input frame window, the cutscene that we are attempting to dash attack before starting is actually the cutscene that allows us to do a faster version of teleporting. So when you there's two ways to teleport in this game. One being to call Midna using the Z button, and then choosing a teleport location on the map. Another being that we can just open up our map at any time using the D-pad pressing the Z button, and we are then able to teleport using that method as well. This is a little bit faster, and once we have progressed this far in the game, we no longer ever again use the Z button to call Midna to warp. The first 2 warps are the only ones that we ever use the Z button for. After that, the cutscene that I was inferring, the Gorge Skip cutscene, being the trigger that activates the ability to use the map warping feature, as opposed to calling Midna.
Absolutely. And Mofat, interestingly, going for early City in the Sky here.
Very interesting indeed. I have never seen this attempted during the Lineru vessel before.
Nor have I.
Split. This is something that is used normally much later on to basically, I guess, just calling the cannon to Lake Hylia early here. Essentially, oh no, we can't yet. But anyway, so that is used to skip going to the Temple of Time, collecting the wand, the rod, and manipulating all the owl statues throughout Lake Hylia. We never do that in this run, so clipping through the statue there allows us to get to City in the Sky earlier.
Now, I am glad that wasn't an attempt to soft lock there. I have seen that happen in races before. There is a little bit of a unfortunate thing in the game. If you save in that room and then exit the room and reload the save, you actually can't escape because Minda won't allow you to warp the stone or the cannon, but you also can't exit through the door. So that is something I have seen runners do in the past, is they just soft lock the game at that point.
Absolutely. So the boss bug here is the last step in collecting and finishing the Lineru Twilight that we're seeing Bruggles do right now. Again, not a lot of tricks to be spoken of here, but there are optimizations to make this fight faster. You can bonk the bug right on the first time that it dashes at you during a small window of time, and you're able to skip the bug flying back up and kind of repeating a dash attack at you. You're also able to cut the death animation scene down by hiding yourself behind the last leg on the upper right corner or upper left corner, as you saw Bruggles do, before using the Midna charge, and that significantly cuts the amount of time that the cutscene takes to finish. So Chad asking what the next step after Twilight Realm is cleared. We now have cleared all the Twilights that we're going to be clearing throughout the course of this run, and we now are going to go get the Zora armor for Bruggles. If you were doing the Gorge Void no Zora armor route as Mofat is doing, you would normally go and collect the bomb bag. First, you would have to trick Izza, the poor soul tormented by horrible shadow beasts and shadow monsters and all that kind of stuff in the Twilight Realm. You go and help her out and then steal her bomb bag from her, because Link's such a nice guy. Bruggles is going to collect the Zora armor at this point.
And after that, we are going to be seeing Bruggles enter Snow Peak, which is the one and only time we are going to be in that temple, as it's not required in the speedrun to complete the temple to complete the game.
Absolutely. We're going there simply to get the ball in the chain, fighting Darkhammer, the most aptly named mini-boss in the entire game, seeing as there's nothing dark about the creature at all and does not use a hammer. But there you go. You will be fighting Darkhammer to get the ball in the chain. So in order to do the escape properly, We saw Bruggles use Epona to clip out of bounds there. That can be kind of a tricky out of bounds clip there. It sets the escape in such a way where we're able to complete it faster without actually fighting and killing King Bubbling and all that, and getting the enemy infinite respawn to stop. So clipping out of bounds there, using an out of bounds that I've never tried it myself. I don't use this route, but I do, from my understanding, it is a rather it can be a rather tricky out of bounds to try and learn. So.
So interestingly, both runners at this point casually were about 5-6 hours into the game. Obviously, these runners are doing it much less time.
Yeah, I believe my first completion of this game, and now mind you, probably a lot of it was spent just walking around aimlessly and yada yada, not knowing what to do. But 70 hours to my first ever completion of the game. Bruggles, because using this route, able to get a nice 0 time loss 100 rupee there, which we do need to collect 300 by the time we want to enter City in the Sky. Just due to the fact that you're waiting for this caravan escape sequence to complete, able to pick up a 300 drop there in the chest, minimizing the amount of RNG and or rupee route variations that you might need to do to make sure that you have 300 by the time you're entering. Yes, I do believe you are hearing the audio from Bruggles' stream.
I can't.
Yeah. So, but anyway, as I was saying, that is one thing that we as runners need to be paying attention to during the course of this run. We like I said, we need 300 by the time we're ready to enter City in the Sky. So obviously, the way we have routed out the game, we always make sure to have 300 by that period. Sometimes that going better than others. The way it's routed out is actually fairly consistent. I can't say I've had too many runs where I wasn't able to enter City in the Sky. Funny enough, my last PB actually, I was 1 rupee short. Literally just 1 rupee short when I tried to enter City in the Sky. So it is pretty tight. There are backups you can get in. I almost just said Aegon Waste. I'm a Metroid Prime speedrunner too, so sorry, people. I meant Arbiter's Grounds. So in Arbiter's Grounds, you're able to get some backups if you're going to be a little short, though. Aegon Waste.
We are going to go see the Luminoth here and get the Violet Translator.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly.
Good old energy transfer unit.
Yep. Got to make sure to restore the energy to the light world here, so the dark world stops trying to take over. Oddly enough, some parallels there with clearing the Twilights.
Absolutely.
Clearing the Twilights.
Shadow Beasts.
Absolutely.
I mean, I guess you could say that Ganondorf is Emperoring. Oh no, I guess Ganondorf would be Dark Samus then?
No, Ganondorf would probably be Emperoring.
Okay.
Dark Samus would probably be like Zant.
Okay. I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Like Bisky said, there are so many parallels between those, between the Prime series and the Legend of Zelda series, both masterfully constructed series overall.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a reason. There's a lot of people that indulge in watching both Metroid Prime and Zelda speedruns. The games coming out, kind of concurrently with each other back in the 90s and early 2000s, and most retro gamers definitely taking advantage of both phenomenal series.
I believe Echoes actually came out about a year before Twilight Princess came out.
So Bruggles is about to do map glitch here. Map glitch, something that Mark did mention earlier, is required to get to the top of Snow Peak here. To climb this mountain normally, you would need to have the fishing rod. You need to go and you'd need to catch a reek fish, smell it with the wolf, and gain its scent. having that scent, you're able to actually use it to travel through the blizzard and snowstorm here. Map glitch allows us to actually traverse this area without doing that. It saves a ton of time. I mean, it is a huge time saver in terms of just how, the routing and all. Map glitch being something that would normally be fairly difficult to pull off RTA if we didn't have the lovely controller unplug strats. Unplugging your controller and simply pressing the inputs required and then plugging it back in locks the inputs onto the controller, meaning that you don't have to worry about attempting to get these inputs first try or on the correct frame. It is a one frame trick. You need to try and warp and you need to try and transform from Wolflink to human and warp at the same time. And in order to do that, we just use the controller unplugged strat. And that activates map glitch. Now, the reason that we howled at the stone right there is because with map glitch active, you actually soft lock the game trying to exit this area and enter into the next area through the loading zone. This kind of catches the game up to speed, so to speak, in terms of what's going on in the memory. And the room is loaded properly once you've howled at the stone. Meaning that we're able to crawl into the ice cavern here without the soft lock danger.
Absolutely. Map glitch, what it essentially does is it unloads all loading zones, which if you attempt to go through the loading zone that you go through by digging, it causes you to soft lock, but you just essentially get stuck on the ground. And that is completely inescapable. That's why we refer to it as a soft lock, whereas a hard lock would be functionally the game crashing.
Now, Bruggles using yet another example of a long jump attack there, throwing the boomerang over the void there. We do this simply to skip having to fight the shadow beast at the top of the mountain here. Not only is it slower to fight the shadow beast, but it that's the whole reason we do it. It's slower to skip fighting it's faster to skip fighting the shadow beast. Now, an interesting side effect of that is that the blizzard never clears up from the mountainside here. So now Bruggles is about to embark on what honestly is something that when you begin running this game, you had no idea, but was going to be extremely frustrating. Blind snowboarding can be just rather mind-numbingly hard unless you practice it.
I straight up still don't do it.
It's just honestly, it's you wouldn't think not being able to see where you're going makes that much of a difference, but man, oh man, does it make hard traveling down this snowboarding section very difficult. So seeing Bruggles do this as fast as you're witnessing just goes to show how many countless hours and how many runs this runner has completed and put into this game, how much time they've put into this game. Just demonstrating, the masterclass of the elite Twilight Princess runners here.
Notably, Bruggles not going for the purple rupee on the tree. Oh, that's very unfortunate.
No, I think you were good. Oh, if he would have made it literally 3 inches farther and not hit that rock face, he would have actually landed on the portion of land of terrain that's actually below that gap. The very first gap and the second gap that you need to jump across for the shortcut both lead to voiding out. However, on that third jump there, it is possible to fail that jump but still land in bounds on the terrain and actually be able to finish the snowboarding section without game overing right there, which unfortunately Bruggles got denied by about a millimeter there, so that was kind of an unfortunate side effect there.
And just an update to the chat, anyone just joining us here, we are watching Mofat and Bruggles doing an any percent race for Wolf Dash 2.0.
Absolutely.
Hosted by Zelda Speedruns.
So Bruggles successfully getting out of the so it is a shortcut that you're seeing the runners take there. It normally you could just go a much slower route down the mountain. Also skipping the minute text box there. That's a pretty tricky little jump attack that you use. That can be kind of a frustrating skip. So Wolf Dash 2.0 is the tournament ladder that the tournament ladder that ZSR and the Twilight Princess Discord are hosting. Runners are attempting to make their way to the top of the bracket by competing in any percent speedruns.
And to those asking in the chat about whether there's a Twilight Princess randomizer, the answer is functionally, if there's a game, there's a randomizer.
Absolutely, yeah. There totally there totally is. So some interesting things to note here in Snow Peak. You just saw yet again some more utilizations of the rather challenging LJs that we. I guess they're mildly challenging. They're not amongst the hardest in the game, but using some decently technical LJs there, and floors and walls are more of a suggestion than anything else. So we're gonna go ahead and just clip through the floor there, making our way to the next area of the temple here. Snow Peak being one of the more comically broken dungeons in the game. We are now going to use another skip to get past this Freezard, his name is. This one I actually know because it's called Freezard Skip. So there you go. It's one of the enemies that I'm 100% sure I know the name of it. Basically, we can skip getting past this Freezard by utilizing the invincibility frames that Link has after getting hit by the Freezard there. Bruggles actually... Oh, no, I was going to say... No, he didn't.
He got it. He got it.
Wait, what? Oh, no way. Wow,
that could have been incredibly unfortunate. A death.
That was... Even had the visuals of the ice actually freezing Link there. So that was...
wow.
No! Unfortunately, Darkhammer does 2 full hearts of damage when hit by the ball and chain, so you do need to be careful with your health there in order to not be killed. Unfortunately, Bruggles losing a couple more hearts than intended to the Freezard during the skip there. Also, go ahead.
Unfortunately, dying to that mini boss fight spawns you just outside the room, whereas dying anywhere else in the dungeon is actually going to reset you to the beginning of the dungeon.
Yeah, so that is thankfully it doesn't. It's not a huge time loss to die right there. That being said, I was also going to mention too the way in which you get hit by the Freezard actually determines whether or not you're going to lose a full heart or a half of a heart. Side hopping in the Freezer, the way you saw Bruggles doing, actually does a half of a heart of damage versus just standing and getting hit by the ice breath being breathed out by the Freezard. That does a full heart of damage. So sometimes that can make a difference in what strats you're going to use in the interior fight here. Darkheimer being kind of a tricky boss. The hitbox, you need to target the tail and not the head. And sometimes even doing that, you still end up not being able to damage the tail when you're directly in front of it. It can be kind of a frustrating little fight, especially seeing as you only have 3 hearts at this point in the game. That will kind of dictate what strats you're going to use. You can one cycle Darkhammer there, as you saw, with a very precise series of jump attack. It's quick spins being input by Bruggles here.
Mofat strangely once again going for City in the Sky. Or early City in the Sky.
I am actually at this point totally unsure as to what route, what Mofat has decided to do here. Definitely not taking the conventional way through the game. So
not sure if this is on the fly routing or what's going on here.
Not 100% sure. I wish I guess I am not 100% sure. I've never seen this route through the game, so you never know. Maybe Mofat will surprise us with something here.
AX, if you're still in the chat, could we get you to roll over to Mofat's stream and just confirm what's going on here for us?
So now Bruggles will be fighting Morpheal. Having collected the Zora armor, he thankfully doesn't need to deal with the immense stress. He's about to discover. She's about to discover early Hyrule Castle. That's what's happening right now.
Very good. Arbitrary code execution.
It has been confirmed. We need this in the community for early Hyrule Castle. So just doing some glitch hunting work for us. Well, Bruggles does a really fancy set of footwork and LJs here to get past the boss key. So this is what we call boss key skip for Lakebed Temple, and one of my favorites in the game, honestly. So all the 3D Zeldas kind of have very drastically different speedruns in ways that you see techniques that are used to get through them. Essentially, that's one of the few that reminds me heavily of Majora's Mask. So one of my other favorite 3D Zeldas, using an LJ there to get on to clip into, I don't know, to kind of be like out of bounds on the bridge, and then using some fancy footwork in order to get ourselves to a very precise location, to be able to skip past the boss key there. So yeah. That it is very possible to skip Lakebed Temple, and if that technique is a little challenging looking for you, is actually an old school strat too that uses a bomb to clip you through the vines at the bottom of that central room there, and then you can tap swim your way to the loading zone from out of bounds. So multiple methods actually in which you can get to the skip getting the boss key. Yeah, Simi kind of pointing out in chat though, it isn't necessarily skipping Lakebed Temple. It's just skipping the boss key. Unfortunately, basically the game checks at certain points to make sure that you have the proper items in your inventory in order to continue and, so to speak, set the next game's the next values in the game to be able to continue. The things that they check for, obviously, are throughout the course of the game, you're collecting the shrouded or the
fused shadows.
Fused shadows. Thank you. The fused shadows and the mirror shards from the Mirror of Twilight, and the only the only fused shadow that we need to collect out of the 3 that are collected from Forest Temple, Goron Mines, and Lakebed Temple here is the last one in the sequence. So we don't have to complete Goron Mines. In fact, we never even go there in any percent. And we don't ever have to beat the Forest Temple either. We only need to destroy Morpheal in order to get the 3rd and final Fused Shadow. So the game, when it checks to make sure that we have that, progresses us to Midna's Desperate Hour here, which is what is going to happen as soon as we leave Lakebed Temple. Midna's Desperate Hour will commence, and we'll have to go and talk to Zelda again to heal to heal Midna.
And Midna's Desperate Hour's completion is actually a prerequisite in order to be able to get to Arbiter's Grounds, which is the next part of the game here. So.
Right. In which point you're supposed to start collecting the mirror shards for access to the Palace of Twilight.
I had to catch myself almost calling it Temple Grounds there for a moment.
Isn't it? I did. I was watching Echoes earlier today, so it's been in my head all day. We got the Dark World, we got Twilights, we got Phantom Zant and Dark Samus here. We got it can be an easy mistake to make. Not nearly as much out of bounds used in this run, though, as you're going to see in Echoes.
There is morphing, though.
There is morphing. There is morphing. In fact, you're very right about that. And no shortage of frame perfect tricks as well, in either. So,
I suppose you could call release of this guy door warping.
Yeah, you totally could.
Item loss skip, unfortunately, not a thing, though.
No, we do need to. Well, actually, we do plenty of item loss. Well, we don't actually lose any items in this game, but we skip plenty of them.
Classic 80% ropes.
Yep. We collect what is needed and what is fastest. Mina's Desperate Hour here, and as I had mentioned earlier, so the run being set up split kind of between two drastically different kind of elements. The first half being so heavily trick heavy and very hard to a lot of run ending tricks. Whereas the second half here, having killed Morpheal, we no longer really have too many run ending tricks or run ending scenarios. Players might still lose a run here at the final half, simply just due to finally failing enough movement optimization and stuff like that. The dungeon crawling portion being rather grueling. It's a lot to optimize and a lot of things small things that can go wrong here and there. But with the run ending tricks kind of being done, Mina's Desperate Hour being a great example of that. This is almost purely movement optimization. A player attempts to optimize their time in this particular segment quite virtually just through making as little movement errors as humanly possible. Also, shout outs to Mina's Desperate Hours song being one of the great tracks in the game for sure.
Absolutely. My ringtone for so long.
My personal favorite probably still going to be Zora's Domain. Something about that track is really special for me.
It feels like summer almost, and that's what I love about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And and the Zora's Domain track, it's one that you actually hear, and I don't think it's ever heard in Wind Waker, but in the other three of the four original 3D Zeldas before Skyward Sword came out, it is heard in all three, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, and Twilight Princess, which is kind of neat that they rehashed such an amazing song for each release.
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, the Zora's not really appearing in Wind Waker. That would be why.
No, they don't. Lots of water though in Wind Waker.
Yes, the final Ganondorf fight, also an excellent song. Very
personally the entire ending sequence in this game, the whole fight sequence between Puppet Zelda and Beast Ganon and horseback and finally against Ganondorf proper. Probably my favorite of all time in any of the 3D Zeldas. They did such an excellent job with the ending sequence in this game. Not only is it fun to speedrun, but even from a casual standpoint, just an absolutely incredible ending to the game. And Mofat, it appears, tapping out, unfortunately unable to find early Hyrule Castle for us. The desperate search for the I guess you would say the fabled early Hyrule Castle ends with that final bonk. GG Mofat, thank you for participating. Too bad on the unfortunate events during the run, but as mentioned, chat, this is such an incredibly difficult game to speedrun. Top runners having to reset and having bad events occur to them very frequently. There's no doubt about it. The top runners succumb to succumbing to unfortunate events all the time. Mm-hmm. So
Bruggles, I don't think anyone's going to stop you from finishing here. I do just want to confirm with the moderator, and if at all possible, to see if you're going to be required to finish, though.
I guess I wouldn't know. I guess I would say, if this was SRL, I guess it is. I know finishing a race is required for a completion. But that being said, it's possible that isn't the case here. But either way, Bruggles appearing to want to finish the run here, so hopefully we will see the duration. Still well within PB range too, if we're in fact only 2 minutes behind too. So
absolutely.
2 minutes. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Mofat, if you're still around, would you like to stick around for the end of the run just so we can nab a quick interview with you? Or I don't really want to interrupt Bruggles' run or the commentary there to actually perform an interview right now. But if you'd like to stick around, I'm sure we can work that in for you. You were saying, Pisky.
I don't know what I was saying.
my
No, that's all good. I was just mentioning that actually it looks like we're only a minute behind now at this point, having saved a little bit of time. So and Bruggles uncertain whether or not a PB is possible, but I would like to think so with only a minute differential here. Bruggles' time being on the lower end of the spectrum for TP at a 3:09. It is rather difficult to PB if too much time is lost here. But the end of the run having so much optimization that, I believe it's more, totally doable. So, but as he mentioned too, it's actually lower. This is just as later. Oh yeah, it's right. Your PB's a 3:03, isn't it? I think I looked that up before the run started. So 3:06. Okay.
Okay, so we
right
have
on.
Information. Bruggles is going to be required to finish the run here. Hopefully the stream doesn't go to total dumpster fire here as one of the moderators attempts to switch it for us. Just bear with us here if there are any technical difficulties.
And I might need to just refresh here. That's probably what's going on. Perfect. I am back up and running, it looks like, with a... Yes, I am up and running with full chat and video here. So it looks like everything went well on my end anyways.
I am good to go over here as well. Mofat, we are going to confirm Polar Bear, however. Greetings from Canada.
So Bruggles now making his way to Arbiter Grounds. This being the beginning of the dungeon crawl that I referenced earlier. From here on out, we do still, I guess, so to speak, skip portions of dungeons. However, with the first couple of dungeons that you did see with Snow Peak and Forest Temple and Lakebed, we essentially did as little possible in those dungeons as is possible. And from here on out, it is basically kind of required that we do most of the dungeons in the intended way. Simply using just route optimization and clean gameplay to do them much faster than is normally seen from a casual perspective. A little bit, certain skips here and there, but definitely a little bit more time spent in each of these dungeons coming up as you were accustomed to seeing from the first half of the run.
Our condolences, Norinato, for your loss of sleep here. Just a quick thing. Would it be possible to get quality options on the commentary view of slightly better than 360/30? I don't know if that's just a me thing or if I have to refer.
No, it actually no, it is. I've been actually watching it in 360 the entire time here. It is rather brutal. I've been able to tell what's going on, obviously, but.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. This game's polygon count isn't so high that we can't tell what's going on, but there's almost some data moshing going on my screen right now.
So we're going to be seeing the next instance of map glitch coming up here, used in Twilight Princess 80%. Essentially, we at this point in time are using it to try and skip the entire portion of having to work your way through the encampment of the enemies up here. Using map glitch, we can actually use an LJA to get out of bounds again, and anyway, I'm sorry, I was reading chat there. We were able to get out of bounds and use a jump attack to go through a loading zone and start the King Bubbling 3 fight much faster than intended. Also, we're gonna see a little bit of a neat little skip here. It is fastest to use Wolf Link to clip through the side of this fence right here. Obviously, another unintended aspect that the developers probably didn't necessarily think of while creating the game. We are able to use Wolf Link to get through. Sorry, I didn't get a ton of sleep last night either.
We're all tired. It's been a long week.
I literally looked at chat and you were the last person to say something, and then I tried to say something immediately afterwards, and so your name was the first thing I noticed there.
Mm-hmm. And up next, we are going to be entering Sanctuary Fortress. Smile W.
Yeah. So we did. We're getting out of bounds here, and any moment the King Bubbling 3 fight will hopefully activate. It is possible to indefinitely fall out of bounds here if you miss the spots that you're intending to get to. I know from back here it's much further away, so it takes a little bit longer. If you, Bruggles is actually opting to not use the strat that I was talking about earlier, using an LJA to get out of bounds. Both strats work, obviously. That one, you're just a little bit further away from the loading zone, and so you do need to jump attack for a longer period of time before hitting. Using the other method, as I spoke of, it is actually possible to jump attack out of bounds and indefinitely fall without hitting the trigger to start this cutscene in this fight. Obviously, essentially being, I don't know if that would be considered a soft. Yeah, it would be a soft lock, I believe. But you would, you're essentially just stuck in infinite fall, and you'd have to reset. For that reason, I personally use a safety save once I enter the desert. Also, if you get killed by King Bubbling right here, having performed map glitch, the game actually permanently freezes while on the game over screen. So a couple of different things that can happen to you trying to enter Arbiter's Grounds that are potentially pretty devastating if you are newer to the game running it as I am. And for that reason, I opt to use a safety save once I enter the desert, just to eliminate the risk of massive backtracking, save one of these bad things happening to me. So
for sure. To invoke everyone's favorite stale GDQ meme at this point, the game gets confused when you do map glitch.
Yes, the game, it does indeed get very confused. Not surprisingly, though. Still, Arbiter's Grounds, as I had mentioned, mostly just movement optimization. We will see one fairly significant trick used here coming up pretty shortly, which we refer to as Po1 skip, or Po skip for short. Shoutouts to Mr. Men, who actually discovered a much easier method for this trick. Before Mr. Men came around and found this newer method, runners were forced to attempt a mind-numbingly difficult setup for skipping this first Poe. And obviously it's much faster to do so, but with this new setup here, not only is it just significantly easier, but it actually allows you to attempt it multiple times even before actually losing time to it. So not only is it much easier, but it also has a fast backup, recovery, so just overall, and when I say much easier, I mean like this isn't even close to being one of the hardest tricks in the game anymore, whereas before it probably was. So yeah, definitely a huge shout outs to him and everything that he's done for this game and progressing it forward. Not being the only significant thing that Mr. Men has found for us. So definitely big shout outs to those out there that glitch hunt and aren't content and satisfied with the current state of things and sit and grind mindless procedures that end up becoming beneficial to us in the long run. You just never know what you might find. So huge shout outs to those willing to do that for us.
Absolutely. And now I do apologize, folks. I am going to have to duck out here. I do have to get ready for work. It's been a pleasure. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of Bruggles run. GG's to Mofat and Bruggles both. And thanks for hosting with me here, Fitsky.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. Have a good time at work, and I appreciate the help on the commentary.
It's my pleasure. See you guys later.
So Bruggles, taking advantage of what I mentioned earlier, with the quick recovery here, even despite not getting the LJ first try here or second try, we're actually still able to attempt this, like I said, multiple times before actually losing time to it. Just simply not quite getting the angle correct after the LJ here while getting on top of the pillar. And we got it now, so we're good to go. And absolutely horrible luck with these enemies here. Not only while attempting to back up the LJ there from on the first half before post skip, and then also there while attempting the second LJ to get across that gap there, just kind of getting trolled by the enemies in that room there. A little bit of minor RNG elements, I guess, at play. So now we're going to be kind of just cleaning up the temple here, making our way to Spinner. The Spinner, being something that we do need to beat the game, we'll need it in City in the Sky. Also required to beat Star-Lord, which is the boss of this temple. Before that, though, we need to just defeat the Poe. I like to just call them the Poe sisters because you know what? Zant as well. You need the Spinner to beat Zant as well. But in Ocarina of Time, obviously, this being a little bit of an elude to that, you in the Forest Temple need to defeat the four Poe sisters in order to make your way to the last part of the temple. Kind of an elude that we are required to once again obtain the souls and well, we don't need to actually collect these souls. That's just how we defeat the Poes. But getting their lanterns to burn out here will reignite the torches in the main room, allowing us access to the back half of the temple, getting us access to the Spinner. We're gonna sniff the scent here of the Poe. This is required in the main room. We're now going to use that to make our way to the ground, where we can then dig up a chain which allows us to get to the bottom part, the other half of this side of the temple. It's funny though, because if you don't get that scent and you did Poe skip, it's essentially like Poe skip but without the actual skipping the Poe portion of it, because then you're actually then you're actually still required to kill the Poe in the first room instead of skipping past it. So I have actually seen that happen before, where a runner will do post skip, do the LJA to get on top of the pillar, and then actually forget to do the scent, and then end up having to kill the Poe anyways. So always make sure to get the Poe scent. Very important. Just collecting some of the final rupees that are needed here. 276, so we're almost there. As I mentioned, we do collect a large portion of our rupees in Arbiter's Grounds here. Multiple enemies, the Redeads, actually give us 20 drops from each of them, and then there's that chest that we got as well, which gave us 20 rupees. So we're able to clean up our rupee count and make sure that we have 300, which we obviously need upon completing Arbiter's Grounds here. City in the Sky being the next place that we go. As you saw there, one of the major time loss elements throughout Arbiter's Grounds here is you can be trolled rather badly by both enemies and the Poes while trying to defeat these Poes. That Poe kind of clipping into the wall there a few times while Bruggles attempted to finish it off, meaning, you know, there was some unnecessary time loss due to bonks into the wall there. And this holds true with just about every Poe that you need to clear up. Little things that can just... little optimizations that you can try and use to clean up the risk of RNG and bad things happening while you're trying to get past this portion. Also, shoutouts to the mechanics of Wolf Link. Controlling Wolf Link in this game is yet again another one of the things that might be taken for granted from watching runners. If you're inexperienced watching this game, Wolf Link controls can be a little finicky at times, to say the least. And it is just so... it happens all the time. Bonking into walls and not having Wolf Link do exactly what you wanted it to do. The controls can just be a little funky at times. So we are 3 rupees short. Hopefully, Bruggles knows of a rupee or two that he can obtain in here by the end of Arbiter's Grounds to make sure that we're not going to experience any time loss due to rupee collection. That last Redead that he destroyed being kind of usually the final Redead in the rupee route. It looks like we might... Nope. I was going to say that other Redead there, it does actually drop another 20, obviously. So that is one that a runner could opt to obtain if they needed. With only being 3 rupees short, though, it's very possible Bruggles is aware of some other rupees that he can collect before the time comes. So that completes the pose portion of the dungeon. We are now able to travel to the back half here and collect the spinner, fight Death Sword, and collect the spinner. We're going to do kind of a neat little clip here again, kind of similar to the one that you saw in the desert to get to the backside of the desert to get to Arbiter's Grounds. We're going to clip between the wall there and that pillar, making access to the boss key much, much faster. So with the boss key, we're now able to just go and fight Death Sword, collect the spinner, and make our way to the end, back the end of the temple here. And so now destroying these 3 enemies will open up the gate leading to the second half of this room here. That's another one of those cool rooms where you'll see a variety of strats used between runners. There's a lot of different things that you can do to optimize this room to get behind that gate there. If you have bombs, for example, you can always drop a bomb on the pile of bones and use that to destroy the enemies, making your way to the back there. Seeing Bruggles opt to use the ball and chain, which does, I think, the most damage out of any weapon that we have in the game. So obviously that is always a quick option for any damage that needs to be dealt. Death Sword being one of my personal favorite mini bosses in the entire game. This is just a fun fight to do in terms of speedrunning. A variety of strats can be used in order to quickly and efficiently finish it off here. As you saw, we did a quick spin there immediately after using the hook shot or claw shot to stun Death Sword. Death Sword will then do a rotation around the room like this after getting hit with the claw shot, and quickly finishing it off using the Master Sword and Ball and Chain and the claw shot. Just a variety of things and weapons you use to finish this boss off, making it one of the most, I guess, diverse and unique boss fights that we do in the course of the run. A lot of bosses just simply, target boss and target boss with L and hit with sword or whatever, what have you. Chad asking what happened to the other runner. So unfortunately, Mofat had a very unfortunate series of events occur during the beginning of the run, which is extremely trick heavy and a lot of really hard tricks. Succumbed to a series of bad events, and they did unfortunately forfeit. Bruggles needing to finish the run here though to solidify the victory. So we still get to see the second half of the run here, and hopefully a good speed run from Bruggles. So things going relatively well on Bruggles' side. Just a little things here and there, but overall a pretty good run here. As mentioned, with the spinner now in our inventory, we can save warp to the beginning of the temple and make our way to the last room here to fight Star-Lord. Star-Lord is a boss that has quite a kind of nasty RNG element. The RNG doesn't typically lose runners a lot of time, but it can be certainly really hard to deal with sometimes. This is one boss fight that can be really frustrating on occasion, attempting to get to the second half of the fight. The fight is broken up obviously between 2 distinct portions. One where you're using the spinner to circle Star-Lord in his full skeletal form, taking out vertebrae, while the second half being using the spinner to circle the room and attempt to take out the skull of Star-Lord. Bruggles getting just some really dumb Twilight Princess mechanics at play there. When he got on the spinner attempting to get to the top of the room, he was taken to the bottom of that instead of the top. Nice little time loss there. Definitely will incorporate the much loved speedrunning phrase of, "That's never happened to me before." Well, falling too far behind was the cause of the forfeit. I guess you'll say. So it was a forfeit, but it was simply because they they lost too much time to some of the unfortunate events early on, and just didn't see it much point to continue, which is understandable at that point in time. So shout out to Mofat, though, an absolutely incredible runner of the game. One of the OG favorites. I personally found the game watching Mofat's SGDQ, or I'm not sure if it was SGDQ. Might have been AGDQ, but anyways, watching Mofat's GDQ run back in the day, that was actually how I discovered Twilight Princess speedrunning. It was SGDQ 2013. Bruggles confirmed for me. So yeah, absolutely. Shout out to Mofat. Bad things can happen to any of the runners in this game. That is a saying in Twilight Princess racing, and that's anything can happen. Pretty decent first half of the fight there. Apart from somebody pointed out, nice arm block Stallard. Yeah, exactly. There was a little bit of a hiccup there with the third phase of that getting blocked by the arm, but that is by far not the worst thing that can happen to you during that phase, which is my personal least favorite phase of the fight. It can be extremely trolly. Here we're going to see a pretty cool attempt at an optimization. You can actually skip having to do most of this second half of the fight by running around, by having to travel all the way up the center column, by timing a few very precise rolls and hopping on your spinner at the correct time. You can actually forego that entire sequence and get Stallard and stun Stallard very, very quickly. And then chaining a series of quick spins, one after the other, you're actually able to forego the multiple. So that I think it's intended to take 4. I could be wrong. It's either 3 or 4 phases of having to knock stun Stallard's skull and then attack, doing damage. You're actually able to completely forego all of that by one cycling Stallard, using the quick method there to stun Stallard's skull, and then chaining all those jump attacks with each other, or I should say quick spins into each other, does enough damage to finish off Stallard extremely quickly. So a pretty good Stallard fight there. Overall, a decent Arbiter's Grounds, a couple of trolls in the beginning, and 2, I believe, failed attempts at the post, but nothing worse than that happening, thankfully. So Arbiter's Grounds probably being considered one of the more difficult dungeons to optimize in the run. Personally, I think a lot of runners would agree that Palace of Twilight is going to probably be the hardest to optimize and most likely to lose time to, but Arbiter's Grounds definitely being the next the runner-up in that. So now, having completed that, we are now going to make our way to City in the Sky. Early City in the Sky was a very crucial element that was found for this run. It's a pretty simple clip that we use to get behind the statue underneath the house here in Kakariko, Ronaldo's house in Kakariko here. And simply using a transformation clip, transforming from Human Link into Wolf Link with the correct angle, we're able to clip behind the statue here. This is really, really significant, though. As casual players of the game might know, in order to get to City in the Sky, you normally need to beat the Temple of Time, and you normally need to collect the rod that allows you to control objects, and particularly the owl statues that are placed throughout Hyrule Field. So this clip here actually allows us to skip all of Temple of the Time, never having to collect the rod, never having to do any of that, and we're able to get to City in the Sky much sooner than you would normally be able to do so, and it allows us to skip a pretty significant portion of the game. So having the full rupee count here, 300, and successfully having clipped behind the statue here, we're now ready to enter City in the Sky. The next in the series of dungeons that we need to complete to get to the end of the game. I believe we're probably going to see the backup ruby on top of the hut here. Yes, it does appear to be the case. So there's a nice little backup that you can get right there if you're a couple rubies short. A nice little 20 spot, quick to obtain there. Bruggles is on decent pace. I will say roughly about a minute 41 behind at the end of Arbiter's Grounds. So decent pace indeed. Definitely a little bit of unfortunate things happening here and there, but still much faster than my runs are at this point in time. So 311, okay, fair enough. Not a whole lot more run ending, or I guess like really potential bad time losses coming up. But world record is 254.11 by Demon. An absolutely spectacular run. If you have not watched that, I could highly recommend going and checking that one out. Demon did a very, very taxing grind for that time. Really, really spectacular speedrun to watch. In fact, really, if you're enjoying these runs, I would say go and check out any of the runners. Any sub 3 run of this game is gonna just be something that will blow your mind for sure. The game being capable of being beaten in under 3 hours is, in fact, very incredible. What with the current routes and tricks that we know, so. And Bruggles pointed out earlier, if for any of you that have joined us since then, his PB is a 306. So the 309, that is his splits, which I'm not 100% sure if you guys can see or not. But anyways, his splits currently are referencing a 309. That was just his latest run, but a 306 being Bruggles' PB. So right up there, right next to the 3 hour mark. Coming up here is the first instance of kind of a significant thing that's going to happen. We're able to skip a large portion of the dungeon by very carefully not hitting a trigger right there, which causes the fan at the top of this room to spin. Skipping that trigger means that we don't have to do like the latter half of this dungeon in order to collect the boss key. We're able to go and get the double claw shots and then immediately go and get the boss key, which is a pretty significant little skip there. The trigger to start that fan is directly in front of the door that Bruggles just went through. And using, a careful setup, you are able to actually open the door before hitting that trigger, allowing us to skip that. Coming back across this bridge after we go in here and collect this key really quickly, we'll then see the next instance of something kind of significant happening. There's a cutscene of Argarok destroying that bridge that we just crossed, and that is pretty slow if you watch that, and also actually changes the location in which you save warp to. We're going to be using a save warp after collecting the double claw shots, which actually puts you right here where you just collected the key. But if you trigger this cutscene and Argrok destroys the bridge, your save warp location actually changes to the beginning of the temple area once again. So for multiple reasons, we're gonna want to skip that cutscene, which we're gonna do by a variety of methods. We'll see which one Bruggles goes for here. That's typically considered to be the fastest one, especially which is just using a side hop from targeting the P to get on top of that little piece of collision, and we're able to just carefully navigate our way around the cutscene. So as you saw there, kind of a unique little time saver that Bruggles just did. Once you have the bridge far enough across the gap there, so once you've been on the spinner for long, the momentum of the bridge moving will actually complete itself without you being on the spinner till the very end. You're able to actually unequip the spinner and move slightly forwards before that little cutscene of the bridge completing finishes, and just a minor time save right there. And one of the many things that a runner's going to use to just get that lower time. This game, just as I maybe mentioned way back at the beginning of the run here, this game just being completely chock full of super minute time savers that aren't necessarily immediately noticeable to the layman viewer. A neat little, he just missed it. I think he probably tried to get a quick spin there. Oh man, terrible luck. So you're actually able to just use a quick spin immediately upon getting to that platform there to take care of those dino foes, but unfortunately getting a little bit trolled. By no means any significant time loss, though. Now we're going to use the man chicken to liberal use of the man chickens from here on out till the second half of the temple here. Another man chicken is going to help us out right here. This room is honestly one of the most notorious rooms. When you first start running this game, most top runners don't really have an issue with this room, and you'll see, as Bruggles did here, got through it just fine. Probably like 20 seconds from entering this room to leaving. This is one of those rooms, though, that as a newer runner, I'm not even kidding, it's possible to spend like 5 minutes in that room. I mean, just absolutely getting slaughtered by the difficulty of traversing that room proper. You can lose so much time to just not doing that correctly. So shout out to Bruggles for demonstrating the correct way to get through there. This is going to be a really neat skip that we're going to see here. With a quick setup and the use of the claw shot, we can actually get the claw shot here without fighting this boss, the arrow foes. This is a pixel perfect trick that has a very tight window of opportunity to do. So kind of a notorious little trick here, but having much experience running the game, Bruggles was able to absolutely seal the deal on that one very quickly. That was an excellent ALFO skip there. So now we have the double claw shots. As I said, that's pixel perfect. The pixel in which you can actually use the claw shot to get through that little gap is a pretty finicky to get, and you have a very limited window of time before Aelfos attacks you. So it can be kind of a stressful trick if you're not used to doing it. The save warp, as I mentioned, will put us back at that chest that we collected the small key from earlier. If Bruggles would have activated the cutscene here, going across this bridge earlier, and Argrok would have attacked it or destroyed the bridge, the save warp would have actually taken Bruggles back to the start of the temple instead of here. So you would have lost a little bit of time to the routing of the temple. Not to mention needing to complete the fan skip again. You would have to successfully skip hitting the trigger for the fan a second time. Which by no means is like a very difficult trick or anything, but it is really, really bad if you do hit that trigger. Basically nothing you can do. Hopefully, I guess you have a save or something, because once you've hit that trigger, it's going to stay activated, and the only real viable backup is actually going around and doing the rest of the temple as intended to get the boss key, and I believe it's like multiple minutes worth of time lost. It is rather important that you get the fan skip. A neat little LJ there through that room quickly to get across those platforms, and now we have the boss key, allowing us to now make our way to the last room of the temple and fight Argrok. So these fans aren't going to be, or these whatever blades aren't going to be moving out here in this room, meaning that Bruggles is going to need to use more pretty neat LJs. It looks like he's going to be going for the double LJ method, seeing as he went to the left here. Nice. He even got the stun on the bird here, so we're probably not going to get troll. This LJ is very tight. I would say this is probably I don't know. It's definitely up there. Maybe it's not the hardest, but it might be the hardest. That double LJ there is definitely one of the most technical in the entire run. Pretty difficult to do. The spots that you need to target are very precise, and again, you kind of have a limited window of time to do it, because obviously those enemies in that room are just dying to attack you, and if you get attacked by one of those while you're doing the LJ, it can be detrimental. So definitely one of the most technical LJs in the run. One of my favorites, though. It definitely looks really flashy and saves a lot of time to get. So nice. This room is one that a lot of top runners will preach that you should be practicing. This is a room that you can lose a lot of time to, and Bruggles, just missed the window on the quick cycle on the second fan there. Successfully getting the first fan, though. You can optimize your movement through this room by claw-shotting these fans as they're spinning in very small windows of time to not have to sit and wait for them to rotate. Obviously, just barely missing the window on the second one here, but cleaning it up fairly fast all the same. So definitely one of the more important rooms to practice, though, if you're trying for a really good time in this game. This is one where you'll notice a runner either make it through that room, very quickly, or taking quite a significant time longer to do if they don't know the strats for fastest methods. A nice little precise claw shot spot there. Just a faster way to get to the top of this room. And yeah, responding to the chat, it was rather unfortunate. GG to Mofat for the race. Unfortunately, succumbing to some unfortunate events early on, just not able to make up the time that was lost. So here we're going to see Bruggles go for a fairly tight timing window. It is possible to re-grab the tail of Argarok here before Argarok takes off and flies around the room again. In order to do this, you need to quickly claw shot this and re-claw shot the tail. You have a very, very, very limited window of time in order to do those inputs, so it saves a fairly significant amount of time. I believe Argarok flies around the room for another 15 plus seconds, might even be like 20. So definitely something to try and optimize if you're learning this fight. We're going to see a quick little void out here at the end of this cutscene. That will just speed up the process of the P-hats being in the right locations and Argarok being at the correct, having stopped flying around the room. So after this void out here, again, there are some ways to optimize this fight, make it a little bit faster. You're probably going to see Bruggles go for the fire skips. So essentially, using the iron boots to sink low enough on the P-hat while Argarok is blowing his flames here makes Argarok stop. So as you just saw, Argarok just stopped breathing fire there. That was because he went low enough on the P-hat after Argarok was breathing his fire, and it significantly speeds up the cycle, causing him to be able to only claw shot to 2 different P-hats instead of moving around and waiting for Argarok to finish blowing fire here. You're going to see that used for both the first and the second cycle. The third cycle, where Argarok breathes fire twice, also has some speed strats for it as well. So hopefully we'll see. Yep, we got a successful one here. Not the hardest thing to do in the world, but definitely something you need to practice in order to do successfully every time. It's definitely not unheard of for a runner to get hit by the fire while attempting to do those skips, so neat. And we got the very fast. That was an excellent Argarok fight there. Excellent. We got all the fast strats there and completed City in the Sky. Most of the tricks, I would agree with that. Some of them, honestly, you can kind of just do runs, and throughout the course of doing runs, you'll have done the trick enough times. I mean, I will put it this way, though. You are correct. Practicing just about anything obviously leads to more success in optimal runs. It's absolutely recommended if you're truly going for a good time to pretty much practice just about everything. Some of the tricks are easy enough to where, honestly, doing them during the course of a run, I guess, is a kind of quote unquote enough, air quotes, practice a person would need for them. But by no means does that actually guarantee 100% consistency in any trick. Just about, I would say there probably isn't really any trick in this run that is like 100% consistent, even with practice. Pretty much everything has the potential to be failed at any point or another, even with practice. Definitely a difficult speedrun. There's no end to the difficult tricks from start to finish, so difficult strats, difficult tricks, different optimization. Right here, as you're falling, you can actually pull out your sword and do a jump attack. This saves a really minor amount of time, seeing as you don't actually fall into the water. This allows us to fall directly onto the bridge and immediately warp to the end of Arbiter's Grounds here, which means that we can access Palace of Twilight immediately. I did mention this earlier. Palace of Twilight, more than likely considered by just about anybody that runs the game to be the most grueling of all the temples that we do. This temple there can be a lot of time loss or a lot of time saved depending on how well it's done, just through optimizing this temple. It's split up obviously between the two different sides, so we're going to be collecting these balls of light, and those once we have both of those, we'll have successfully given the Master Sword back its all of its glory, and the ability to kill Ganondorf. So yeah, I can completely agree with you. They're a little tart. It's something special to watch somebody make their way through this game in just a couple of hours, when you weren't around earlier when I said it, but I think my first completion of this game was like 70 hours. Obviously it doesn't take everybody 70 hours to beat this game, but for my first ever completion, that being 70 hours, it is rather insane that somebody can make their way through the game this fast. This speedrun is honestly one of my favorite. I mean, I'm a little biased, obviously, because I run the game, but I also am just a fan of speedrunning in general. I love many, many different speed games, and this really, truly is one of the best speedruns I've ever encountered. Just through everything that was, just through the fact that it's such a diverse run. There's so much to see and experience throughout the course of it, and there's so many tricks that are important. Oh, okay. I was just worried. Okay, so I'm sorry. Something happened to my visuals here, but in the stream. But it looks like Bruggles knows about it and is working on getting back our capture here. My screen went black, so I was a little taken aback there. But it does look like we're possibly going to be getting capture back at any moment. Oh yeah, he says his capture card became unplugged, so unfortunate there, but not the end of the world. Definitely pretty dumb time loss. That's for sure. The PB probably wasn't possible anyways, though, so I guess at the end of the day, it's not a huge deal. Brutal is just working on plugging the capture card back in. So yeah, it definitely a really amazing speedrun though. There's just so much that happens that, you know, is both noticeable and not noticeable to somebody watching the game if you're unfamiliar with the speed run. The really noticeable things obviously being, you know, the clips out of bounds and the really advanced glitches that we're using. But this run also happens to have a lot of elements that are rather unseen, I suppose you could say, to a layman viewer. Really small optimizations where on specific frames you can input something to save a second here and a second there. You know, just movement in general, text smashing in this game, rolling, pretty much anything you can think about is all actually optimized. You might not think that initially, but I mean, the rolling, you know, it's a certain frame that you're able to roll on to keep your speed and maintain speed. And we are back, so perfect. Bruggles seems to have worked out the capture card issue here. Yeah, the long jumps are my favorite. Personally, my favorite exploit that we use in this run. It's probably what led me to run the game to begin with. There was, you know, I had kind of a. I knew I wanted to run a Zelda game. I speedran Metroid Prime for multiple years. I think I ran Prime for 3 years, and I made a promise to myself that I was going to learn a 3D Zelda as well. And the thing that kind of drew me to Twilight Princess, apart from Majora's Mask, which was the other speedrun I was contemplating learning, was the long jump attacks with the boomerang. That for whatever reason, they just really looked so flashy to me, and I thought that they looked so cool. I kind of at that point in time, just that was kind of what turned the tables for me and made me decide, yeah, I'm gonna learn Twilight Princess, and definitely have no regrets. This has been an incredible game to run. To learn the community. I gave the community a shout out earlier, but always no reason not to do so again. The community is just amazing. The ZSR bot quite conveniently just posted a link to the Discord there. Yeah, I mean, if you ever want to learn a Zelda game, there's no shortage of people that want to help you learn it, and you know, it's such an amazing community. Shout out to everybody that has done everything for newer runners and made this game so approachable to learn. It's such a difficult game to learn how to speedrun. It's really great to have a supportive community behind you, helping you get through the difficulty of it. So. And also, appreciate that, King. That another amazing speedrun as well, LTTP. Having watched multiple runs of those, mostly in GDQ, but also a few in my spare time. Andy, obviously, just being a favorite from GDQs. I've watched a lot of Andy's runs of that game. So, Swordless Link being probably my favorite. The Swordless Link runs are really neat to watch, I do gotta say. And Andy just being a really phenomenal streamer, super funny, super funny guy, and a really great stream to watch. So I'm sure there's other amazing runners as well. I unfortunately don't know too much about the community for A Link to the Past, but simply from a superficial level, that. I will say it's been a joy to watch when I'm at GDQs for sure. So this temple here, going through, we're about to fight Phantom Zant here. This needs to happen twice. Phantom Zant is one of the I'm not going to say difficult, but it is really possible. This is one of the RNG portions of the run, but there's actually methods to completely eliminate RNG here. Hitting Phantom Zant before he spawns enemies actually allows us to damage Zant in such a way where he won't teleport around the room. Casual players may remember Phantom Zant teleporting around the room for like infinite amounts of time, essentially, and we are able to damage him in such a way where we eliminate that RNG. Bruggles unfortunately missing the quick spins to get the super fast cycles, but still faster than allowing Zant to spawn enemies and having the RNG element be present. So not super detrimental that he didn't get the quickest possible cycles on Zant there. Sword play in this game is actually one of the kind of underrated, difficult things that you will see. It is by no means easy to do the most advanced sword techniques in this game. Stabbing into quick spins is definitely up there for the most challenging sword techniques that you can use. Stabbing and getting 2 quick spins initiated out of a stab is something that is definitely requires a lot of practice and a significant amount of time experience running this game. So with that, we've now wrapped up the second half of the collection for getting the updated Master Sword here. Once we're through this last room here, we'll be able to make our way to the boss key in the final rooms of the temple. Unfortunately, just missing the platform there was Bruggles. Having to lose just a minor amount of time here to... Oh, no. This is one of the trolliest rooms in the entire run, though. In the entire temple. If it's done correctly, it doesn't really appear much, but if you fall at any point in this room, it can be extremely trolly and bad things. As you're seeing, bad things can abundantly happen here. More so than pretty much any other room in this portion of the game. Or in this portion of the temple, I should say. Having to continuously stun the hand here to prevent it from picking back up the light because of the fall, unfortunately. But with that, we now have the Butter Sword, Master Sword 2.0, the Master Sword with light restored to it. Many different names as it goes by. We can now access the second half of the temple and collect the boss key and make our way to Zant. It is so stressful. I remember always feeling like that hand is right on my tail, for sure. And oftentimes during speedrunning, it really is actually right on your tail, so... And so for those... Oh, nice brake slide. That's the swag right there. Heck yeah. Like to see it. Brake sliding is a rather challenging little technique that you can do in this game. Definitely major swag points for any brake slide seen during the course of a run. For those of you that maybe are joining us at the tail end of the run here, we are watching Bruggles finish up the last portion of Twilight Princess Any Percent, which was a race between Bruggles and Mofat for the ZSR Any Percent tournament being held for Twilight Princess. Unfortunately, Mofat succumbing to some unfortunate events or some unfortunate mishaps earlier in the run, causing a forfeit, and the Bruggles to be left as the solo runner here. So in case you've just recently joined and wonder why there's only one runner, that would be why. But shout out to Mofat for a solid attempt, for a solid first half of the race anyways, and shout out to Bruggles for continuing here. Some capture card issues at the end, causing a little bit of time loss, but by no means is this the run's been pretty good so far. So we're gonna see a lot of utilization of LJs used at the end of this temple here. LJs that you might not see higher caliber runners using. There's tons of them. This temple has a lot of really small optimizations that are really dangerous to do. So this particular LJ right here that Bruggles is doing, I have lost countless minutes to failing that particular LJA, and personally don't even go for it anymore. They are pretty tight in timing and really, really detrimental to fail. It is pretty much a given rule in speedrunning that if you fall in a tall room, you're going to lose a lot of time. And unfortunately, failing any of the LJAs at the last half of the temple here typically occur in very tall rooms. So they are ones that, if you aren't extremely comfortable with them, you're typically going to see runners opt to not go for them. And this room right here is actually one of the most optimized, like maybe in the entire run. There's a lot that happens in this run here, or in this room, and we've done a lot of optimization in order to get through this room as fast as possible. So we're going to, after collecting the boss key here, make our way over to this I guess little area over here in which one of the Zant heads will appear. We do need to kill all the Zant heads in this room in order to progress to get the small chest with the chest with the small key in it to appear. After killing the Zant head, though, we're gonna void out right here, which spawns us back at the beginning of the room, meaning that we can now very quickly make our way over to the remaining Zant heads that are alive and finish them off in order to get the key to spawn. Bruggles standing directly in front of the chest here as it appears. And unfortunately, doing the classic accidentally standing on top of the chest as it appears. I guess there's such a thing as being too optimal. So now we have probably the most notorious room in the entire temple here, in Palace of Twilight. This is something that we go for called early platform. So with perfect movement through this room, and with perfect movement through this room, we're able to get to the top of this room and drop onto the platform without having to wait for a full other cycle. The cycle being a rather slow one, to be honest. The platform makes its way back and forth across the entire room, and with perfect movement and optimization through this room, we are able to make it to that platform without having to spend any time waiting for it to reappear. I do believe he got it. Yes, we're good. And he actually got really optimal RNG there. So not only did he get early platform, but the Zant head actually appeared directly next to the chest that was going to spawn. That Zant head can actually spawn at any of the 3 platforms right there, and having the head spawn directly in front of the chest like that is absolutely the most optimal way for you to get through that room. So he got really lucky there. Nice movement, got the early platform, and optimal Zen head RNG ensured the fastest possible early platform cycle room. Kind of a neat little swag here. Bruggles did miss that one, but we'll probably see him get it here. You can actually time your quick spins here to kill all the shadow beasts before they even really fully appear. Kind of just a neat little time saver for swag there. So now we have the Zant fight. This is probably the hardest. Well, okay, if you fight Morpheal without getting bombs, or without getting Zora armor, that's without a doubt the most difficult fight in the run. Bruggles did opt to get Zora armor, so the Morpheal fight wasn't of any trouble for him. But next to Morpheal, I would say that Zant is probably the next most challenging fight to optimize in the run. This is kind of neat. It's like a boss rush. So basically, for those of you that don't know, Zant will take the form of a handful of bosses that you have fought and mini bosses that you fought throughout the run. And these are all optimized. So what progresses Zant to the next phase here in the first few is the last hit of a combo. Throwing the boomerang there and then swinging the sword before Zant is fully down here ensures that we are hitting Zant with the last hit of a combo. As you saw, he missed those first two swings, but that was intentional. He only needs to hit Zant with the final hit of a sword combo in order to progress the fight to the next phase. Throwing the boomerang here again will cause Zant to disappear and actually start firing those attacks at us, which is what is needed in order to progress the fight on to the next phase again here. So we can skip portions of this portion of the fight by throwing the boomerang around and making sure that we hit Zant with the correct sword combos. Absolutely, this is another very, very well designed fight. This here is too. Again, I will point out this is another point at which if you skip getting the Zora armor, this is kind of the last difficult. This portion of the fight is a lot harder if you don't have Zora armor. It's not quite as hard as Morpheal, but you do need to utilize the underwater bomb air refill glitch with using water bombs in order to make it through this fight. So if you don't have Zora armor, as Bruggles does, this can be a little bit of a challenging portion of the fight right here, with a mild risk of having bad things happen. With the Zora armor, thankfully, so this is one of the reasons that you might see a runner use this route, for example, by the way. It completely eliminates any of the risk of something bad happening here, or during the Morpheal fight, because you have Zora armor. And it doesn't, for reference, Bruggles' PB is a 306. You're completely capable of getting very fast times in this game using the different routes. It is by no means necessary to use the world record route in order to get a good time in this game. The routes have very, very minor time differences between them, and really what it boils down to is a runner's comfort level, or say even a runner just gets bored using a single one of the routes. They can always just switch over to another one just for simply a change of pace. And they don't have to worry about losing a ton of time to it just through routing. So making our way through the fight here, so far an excellent fight from Bruggles. Like I said, nothing too overly difficult here, but lots and lots of small optimizations, mostly through the use of damage sequencing with the sword. This right here is by far the hardest portion of the fight. This final portion can be really difficult if you don't get the damage sequences right here. So we'll see if Bruggles can do the so far so good. Swing, 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 and then a couple to the right, or a couple to the left and then to the right. Unfortunately, he missed the quick spin on that portion right there. But not too bad because he got the first couple hits properly, so this is going to go. As you saw, that was able to be finished off with a single sequence there. The only bad thing that happened was he got knocked off, or knocked over by missing that quick spin. If you don't hit Zant with the final hit of a combo on the first two hits, though, as Bruggles did, that fight can be extraordinarily difficult. Well, I shouldn't say extraordinarily difficult, but it's really easy to lose a lot of time to it. And actually, I've even died to that fight before because Zant gets really trolly. Absolutely. Have a good night there, little tart. Thanks for stopping in and watching. Hope you enjoyed, and hope you can enjoy some future Twilight Princess runs. With that, we are now going to be able to make our way to Hyrule Castle, the last temple of the game, the last phase here. Thankfully, with the completion of Palace of Twilight, we basically don't have anything really hard left to do. This was kind of a nice reprieve for any runner running the game. Being 3 hours in, having made your way through a pretty grueling speedrun, having Hyrule Castle just kind of be a nice little reprieve is definitely not. It definitely doesn't go unappreciated by the runners. A little LJ there to skip the final postman. If you try to cross the bridge right there without that LJ, you will get stuck by you will get stopped by the postman, and he'll try and give you a letter. So with that, I'm trying to think here. Yes, I do believe I am correct in saying that's the final LJ you will see of the run. The last use of the long jump attack. Good call, Bruggles. This is the cutscene right here. I believe it's 1:40. Could be even longer. So anytime a runner has to use the restroom or anything, this is definitely... Or go and refill their water, because remember, stay hydrated. Speedrunning on a dehydrated mind is not optimal at all. Or even watching a speedrun with a dehydrated mind. Definitely not optimal. You're probably going to miss something. Water is good. And can highly recommend. In fact, I'm going to indulge in some of that myself right now. Some high quality H2O. As Bruggles pointed out, we refer to this as squidna. I think for reasons that are probably not necessary to explain. This is the longest cutscene of the game. As I mentioned, I believe it's 1:40. I don't remember the exact time for it off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure that's accurate. It might be like 1:40 something, but I think it's like double the longest cutscene in the game. The next longest is, I think, like almost half that length. So we don't have to actually complete. So I think we probably skipped the most of Hyrule Castle between all the final dungeons of the game that we need to go to. I think we probably skipped the most of Hyrule Castle. We really only need to go and like get this key over here by fighting King Bubble in 4. And then we can make our way essentially to the boss key and then to the end of the temple. So There's a lot of this temple that we don't really need to go to. And as I mentioned, in terms of execution, there isn't a whole lot that's really difficult. So one of the small optimizations you'll see here in Time Savers, you can actually skip that cutscene as it's starting and hold right on the control stick, and you actually skip that barrier. You don't get stuck inside of the barrier, and you're not required to fight the enemies and to make your way through the room. So that's a nice little time saver right there. We will see one more instance of a barrier skip being used. The second one being significantly harder than the first. That one is actually pretty free. If you're playing the game casually and you feel like trying it out, literally just skip the cutscene as it's starting and hold right on the control stick, and you will make it. There's really nothing more to it. The second one is very precise. It's not hard by any means, but it's very precise, and definitely requires a little bit more practice than the first one. This King Bublin fight can be kind of difficult. You do need to chain damage correctly in order to finish the fight as fast as possible. Bruggles, with not an optimal fight, but better than not. It went a lot better than it could go. That fight can take a pretty long time if you don't at least hit him with enough quick spins. I believe the only reason it didn't go totally optimally was because he missed the jump attacks. So. I kind of mentioned it earlier. Sword play in this game, much more difficult than it might seem if you're unfamiliar with the speedrunner or haven't tried running the game before. You'll see a lot of the top runners oftentimes pretty flawlessly execute sword techniques and damage sequences in this run. That you wouldn't necessarily know just from watching it are actually very difficult to do correctly. Definitely any runner that has a time like Bruggles have just spent so much time, so many hours optimizing this, so many hours playing this game, optimizing it. It is no easy feat to obtain a sub 310 time in this game for sure. Even like a sub 330 is really impressive. That was the second barrier skip that you just saw right there. As I mentioned, that one is a lot more precise than the first. You'll see Bruggles throughout the course of this run here, equipping iron boots and unequipping them as he falls. That's because this game takes into account gravity, believe it or not. And with the iron boots equipped, Link is much heavier and falls much faster. So that's kind of a neat little micro time saver that you'll see having been used throughout the course of the run here. Whenever Bruggles has fallen any significant distance at all, he's equipped the iron boots and unequipped them as he fell in order to just save the maximum amount of time possible throughout the course of this run. A neat little trick here. We're going to throw the boomerang and just walk over here and stand. No need to go and position yourself right in front of that platform. That actually kind of skips a puzzle too. There's actually typically a little bit more you need to do in order to get to that particular spot. So here it's just memorization. We have just memorized which one of the which pattern to use to get through right there. Something interesting to note, because due to the Zora Armor Gorge Void route that Bruggles was using, he never actually had to steal the bomb bag from his. He never had to get bombs, and he doesn't have water bombs, and he's never had any reason to get them. So one thing you'll see runners using the different route, the world record run using what we refer to as the Gorge Void no Zora Armor route. This is because it uses Gorge Void, and it also opts to not get Zora Armor. not getting Zora armor requires us to get bombs. And not just bombs, but we need to get water bombs, essentially, to beat the game, because we use a trick that water bombs offer to refill air. And the reason I mention this now at the end of the run is, if you've done that correctly, we actually have some bombs left over, and we're able to use bombs in Hyrule Castle for some minor time savers, for just destroying some enemies at certain points. But it's interesting, just from the different routing perspective. He was able to skip going and getting the fake bomb bag from Izza altogether, and then going and getting one of the real bomb bags afterwards. So that's actually one of the things that this route saves time over the other one. Just being able to not have to go and do that stuff. He was just never required to collect bombs in any fashion. So, which, for those of you unfamiliar with this speedrun but have watched other 3D Zelda speedruns, might come as a bit of a surprise, seeing as bombs are like basically the most important thing that you get in Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Those speedruns heavily rely on the use of bombs. Also, don't even ask most any percent Twilight Princess runners what the bow and arrow is, because we don't know. We've never used one before. We're not really sure what the bow is. Obviously, I'm just inferring the fact that we totally skip getting the bow. We never collect that. People talk about this bow and arrow thing, and I'm not really sure what they're talking about. So we have the boss key now. We're able to start the tower climb up towards Ganondorf here. Kind of neat. Excuse me. Oh no. That was unfortunate. That bonk just cost Bruggles some time there. We don't actually need to equip Wolf Link and use the senses to follow the path through there. We can actually just memorize how to get past that room without doing so. A little bit of advanced swordplay there. 2 swings into a quick spin will finish off those enemies in a single cycle without having to sit and fight them. You'll see the same thing done here. Again, 2 swings into a quick spin. Shoutouts to DF, one of my good friends and fellow Twilight Princess / Majora / Metroid Prime speedrunner, finding that claw shot right there. Until DF came around, it was unknown that you could skip fighting that final Dark Nut and actually claw shot past the barrier there. And that completed the final barrier skip of the run. And shoutouts to DF for finding that one. So now we have the last major RNG portion of the run here. Essentially, Zelda and also Bruggles GG. I hope Zelda gives you the Fabled 7. So basically, Zelda can give you... there's a certain number of cycles that Zelda will do. The best being a 7 cycle, and the worst being like a 13 or something like that. And the time loss can be like upwards of a minute, I believe, if you get the worst cycle compared to the best. So kind of a significant RNG here. I will note that it's unlikely to get like worse than a 9 or a 10 cycle. 7s and 8s are actually relatively common, though obviously not guaranteed by any means. And unfortunately, Bruggles started it off with 3 triangles, which does mean that there's no hope for the 7th cycle. This will probably be something not quite as good. Wow. getting the worst possible start to RNG there. The triangle is the worst, is the slowest of all the attacks that Zelda does. And he started off the fight a dash into 3 triangles. So that's definitely not a great start to the RNG. It requires 3 volleys of Zelda charging it up. Wow, for triangles. I said it's unlikely, but I did say it's unlikely. That didn't mean I said it was guaranteed. Bruggles is demonstrating some of the harsher RNG here in this run, or in this fight. My goodness, he's only gotten 1 volley so far. This is painful to watch. Thank goodness. Come on, Zelda. All right, chat. Let's hope for one more volley here. One more volley. Come on, Zelda. Don't be mean. Come on. Come on. Give us a volley here, Zelda. Don't you dare. Oh my gosh. Zelda. Really rather poning him with some... Oh my gosh. As I said, triangles are the worst, and he could have... I think this might be possibly the worst cycle possible. I haven't actually been counting, but this is a 15 cycle? What the... I didn't even know a 15 cycle was possible. I thought the worst was a 13. Zelda literally pwned Bruggles with the worst possible RNG here I've ever... I didn't actually know this was possible. Gosh. That's terrible. I'm so sorry. Oh man. Feels bad, dude. So, as I mentioned, the worst possible luck there can net you over a minute of time loss. So Bruggles just lost a full minute there. Also, missing the ball and chain swing there. That's rather bad. I won't say bad luck, but it's not great that it happened. You can actually beast Ganon with the ball and chain as he's approaching you during that first dash. So unfortunately, missing that was a little bit of a time loss there. A 15 cycle Zelda. Unbelievable. A little bit of some... That's kind of one of the last like major manipulations you'll see in the run there. Standing in that corner, swinging the ball and chain above your head like that actually kind of manipulates that little portion of the fight, just to speed things up a little bit. So apart from that missed ball and chain swing at the beginning of the fight, we got a good execution on Beast Ganon here. Able to finish it off with a single Midna hit right there, or with a single Wolf Dash right there. Yeah, that was something else. I didn't know a 15 cycle was possible. I've never seen that before. You got like 5 or 6 different triangles and multiple dash attacks. That's something else. I knew it wasn't good when the fight started off with a dash attack followed by 4 triangles in a row. I knew that wasn't good. I wasn't aware that it would mean that bad of RNG though. Ooh, getting knocked off the horse. That's unfortunate. Basically, the one thing that you don't want to have happen during this fight is getting knocked off the horse. Zelda can miss Ganondorf with the shots, with the light arrow shots here, but the RNG associated with that is rather... ooh, that was a pretty harsh angle. Missing the shots is, I'd say, a minor RNG element. Not super major, though. The whole end fight sequence in this game, though, as I had said once before, really, really top notch. One of the they really, at the end of such a great game, really finished it off with, one of the, I would say, probably the best ending sequence in any 3D Zelda game, period. Honestly. So a little bit of advanced swordplay here in the final fight. We're going to attempt to get behind Ganondorf with a swing and then jump attack and chain a quick spin out of the jump attack. Doing this 3 times allows us to finish the fight very quickly. Yeah, dude. I've never had Zelda treat me that badly before. I can't say that I hate Zelda as much as you because I've never seen that happen before. Oh, he does the swag, Iron Boots shot. GG. GG, Bruggles, finishing the race. Again, thank you, Mofat. I know you're not here right now, but thank you, Mofat, for participating, and too bad that you lost your run. Give a shout out to her. She showed up. She had some bad things happen, and unfortunately, that's Twilight Princess for you. Bruggles demonstrating both that the game can be destroyed in such a quick amount of time. Hello, Bruggles. What the hell was that 14 or 15?
I have no idea. Oh my gosh, that was so bad. This could have been a 312.
I knew it was bad when it started with like multiple triangles in a row, because I mean obviously I haven't seen everything that Zelda can dish out, but I do know that anything other than like not getting a volley within the first 2 attacks is usually pretty bad RNG. Getting 3 or 4 triangles immediately is about as bad as I can get. So
I got like 4 cycles at the start. That's already an 11 cycle.
Yeah, that's really rough, man. I mean, kind of a roller coaster of a run. You lost your capture card. I'm assuming you lost some time there because of that.
I lost a little bit there. I didn't lose too much because I kind of tried to like fix it going through loading zones and stuff.
Right. I kind of figured you were gonna fix it as you were making your way through the temple. I mean, at that point, obviously with the PB not being possible anymore, and Mofat having forfeit at that point, it wasn't necessarily anything detrimental by any means. In fact, it was pretty not, it didn't really affect anything. But
actually, I was feeling like really, really safe towards like, I want to say like maybe. So I think. For the rest of early game, I think I played really, really well just because like I wasn't nervous at all. But then for second half, I think I kind of just like got a little too comfortable.
Yeah, very possible, because I noticed you missed pillar post skip a couple of times. Not getting on top of the pillar. You got a little bit of bad RNG with the pose. I mean, kind of worse than usual with that one Poe clipping through the wall. That was kind of unfortunate. If I remember correctly, though, you didn't really have any. You got SS first try, EMS first try. You got pillar clip first try.
Yep. I unfortunately missed Gorge Void, but
you did miss Gorge Void.
Upset about that.
That was just about the only thing, though. Honestly, really.
Yeah, early game went really, really nicely. I'm really happy with how that went.
And I think you'll probably attest, as a runner that's been running this game for a very long time. Honestly, if you get really good early game and all those really hard tricks go right first try, it honestly makes you appreciate even despite later time losses, you're just more okay with the run at that point. There's just so much that can go wrong in the first half of the run. So many really hard tricks, and if you get all those right and you don't really make any mistakes there, not only does it lead way to a chance at a better half of the game, but also your mindset, just like you said, you almost got too comfortable.
Yeah, for sure. Having a really good early game definitely helps with mindset. It's definitely harder to run against, but
Yeah,
that's
no doubt.
it's definitely better to get the time save on the run you're on instead of later. So
No doubt. I can attest. Having some of that time save can be hard to run against, but like you said, there's no harm in having that challenge ahead of you. It's definitely better to just get the time save.
Yep.
As a newer runner, I unfortunately have gotten some really good SS clips, Sword and Shield clips in some earlier runs, and I essentially have to get like a perfect Sword and Shield skip, for example, to not lose time to that anymore.
Right.
And being a newer runner, I still actually I fail it once in a while, so it can be kind of frustrating there. But
I mean, everybody, even at like higher levels, it's just when you're trying to go fast, it can be a much harder trick.
No doubt. I didn't even realize until today. So yeah, you don't even have to get the bombs. That was one of the neat time saves on your run that I kind of just realized. Not having to get the fake bomb bag from Izza or anything like that. So
I personally I used to run just Gorge no Zora armor, but I eventually, I don't know what I started doing, but I started just getting terrible luck on Morpheal and just dying a lot and losing runs, and I just didn't want to deal with it anymore. So I switched to Zora armor, and I've been really happy with the switch. I feel like it's a lot more consistent, and the route change wasn't that hard to get used to, and it's been nice. And you only lose like 20 seconds, so
right. Honestly, I from now having actually seen a run in its completion with this route, I can say honestly the only thing that really looks to me like it would be the most annoying thing to get used to would probably be the caravan sequence. That's basically like the one thing.
The escort definitely takes some practice, but once you get it down, it's really not that bad.
Sure. That clip out of bounds with
well, anyways, I guess that's it.
GG. Thanks for the great run. Thanks for demonstrating.
Mofat, I don't know if you end up watching this, but I hope y'all enjoyed. I certainly did, and I guess I'll see you guys later. Have a good night, everyone.
Bruggles.
Yeah, you as well. GG.
And thanks, Pitsky MP and Mark Heron for doing commentary tonight. Much appreciated.
Absolutely.
And have a good night, everyone. It's a little late. I don't know what time zone you're in, Pitsky, but it's a little getting close to Saturday.
MST, so yeah. 9:22 for me right now.
Nope, it's getting closer to midnight for me, so I think we're going to call it a night. So thanks again for joining us.
Absolutely.
Check out the schedule on zeldaspeedruns.com because there will be more matches coming up. And hope to see you soon. Thanks. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, chat, for hanging around. Hope you enjoyed. That was yet another showing of our Twilight Princess 80% tournament ladder, and hope to see you around for the next one. Again, I was Pitsky MP, and I'm signing out.
Take care. Bye.
Cool.